Sleepy town settled for the night, where every lawn is tailored just right. And it's about time that the back porch light comes on. At that house down the street, at that house on Magnolia Street.
Look at us.
Cute.
All right, let's ride that high. Yay, we got something done.
No, check it off the list.
Yay.
All right. Hey, Witch, hey.
Hey, Witch, hey.
I'm Justina.
I'm Kristina. Welcome to Magnolia Street, your one and only musically inspired practical magic fandom podcast.
Every week, we deep dive on different aspects of the movie and the books, as well as treat your ears to our very own practical magic inspired original music.
This week, we're thrilled to welcome the insightful team behind Popcorn Psychology. They're a podcast of 3 licensed therapists that delve into popular films to explore and explain psychological themes behind them. I'm so fucking excited. I'm like vibrating.
I know you are. You've been fangirling this podcast since God.
2020.
Before we started this podcast, I remember you sent me, well, we'll get into it in a little bit, but you sent me their episode a while ago, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool.
It's really cool. Yes. So today we're going to be talking to Brittany Brownfield and Hannah Espinoza. Brittany is a child therapist who brings her expertise in child development and therapy to the podcast discussion. And Hannah is a marriage and family therapist with a focus on relational dynamics and family systems. There's also Ben Stover, who is a part of their team, and he is an individual therapist. He wasn't able to join us today, but we're saving him a spot on the couch just for him all the same.
Together they combine. I'm just making up words today. Together they combine their diverse therapeutic backgrounds to analyze and discuss psychological issues presented in popular films, making complex mental health concepts accessible and engaging for their audience. And what better time to have this conversation than in May, Mental Health Awareness Month, a time when we're invited to talk more openly about the emotional currents beneath our daily lives, and movies like Practical Magic give us the perfect doorway into those conversations.
Hasn't our podcast been a therapy session since day one? We've had 117 episodes of therapy.
It really has. And I must say, getting into this, I didn't think it was going to touch that realm at all, because I mean, you do a podcast about a pop culture fictional movie, fictional story with magical elements, magical themes. Like, we went into it anyway, wanted to talk about our music, right? That's why that was our motivation behind starting the podcast. But then also we want to talk about witchcraft and magic and more magical elements, our gardens. And we're talking about all those things, but it's cool how the psychological aspect just kind of weaved its way into all of that. And it's important because it's kind of the undercurrent behind all the characters and why they tick the way they do, and how they kind of all work together or influence each other. And it really is very fascinating. And we've done a lot more of that and more in depth with our character analysis episodes and doing their Myers-Briggs tests and really getting a real good study on each and every one of them more individually. So
hyper focused on why are you doing what you're doing? Why are these the decisions you've made in your life? Right. And it really has to come down to nature versus nurture. And I'm so excited to get to talk to them more today. But also doing the individual characters has led us down some paths that have kind of ticked some boxes for us or triggered things for us. And not even the character analysis episodes. Some other episodes I know I've gotten emotional on, and so have you. Oh, yeah. And, I didn't go into this thinking we're going to learn this much about each other this way. I think because these characters have been with us since not adolescence, but a time in our lives where our brains are still
developing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know a big thing for me was that generational, not generational, I don't know, I guess you would call it trauma. The Catholic guilt is real, and it still affects me today, even though I'm a hard ass and I'm oh yeah, fuck them and whatever. But there's things that were ingrained into you as a child that you still carry with you even into your adulthood, and it lingers, if it's not dealt with and talked about. So, and I know that was a big pinpoint for me.
Yes.
And then also the election, when we went through that whole bullshit, our divine rise of the divine feminine episode was a big trigger, and that was
grief, losing my grandfather right in the middle. And then I was at his funeral you know, and we recorded the Stevie Nicks episode. I think I really needed that removal because having you there and getting to talk to you, and you did an amazing job on that episode, but I just needed to like disassociate into this safe place for a little bit.
This really
But
has a safe place.
yeah, then what is practical magic without grief? You know, these women have been through it all.
Oh my God, I know. So yeah, so we're gonna get further down the rabbit hole today with actual licensed psychologists.
Yeah, we
right?
pretend we know what we're talking about, but we're just pulling it out of our asses.
We don't know jack shit.
Yeah.
We just know from what we've experienced and like what our observations are about this movie and these characters.
I first discovered popcorn psychology before we even started the podcast. I'm like, I want more content about practical magic, and nobody had done a show, but there were a few odds and ends as far as episodes. But one of the episodes I found was a 2-hour long episode that Popcorn Psychology did about practical magic that dated back October 2020. The title of the episode was Practical Magic, Generational Trauma, Acceptance, and Identity. And this explored the psychological threads of how the Owens women carry the weight of their generational trauma, the attachment styles, how they're shaped by early loss, how magical thinking can become a powerful survival strategy in the face of grief. Some of the things that they covered, that generational trauma, the so-called curse, you know, acting as a metaphor for the inherited pain, loss, or guilt, like Justina and I talk about Catholic guilt, and emotional avoidance. They talked about attachment styles, Sally's restraint and Jillian's recklessness mirror common trauma responses: fight, flight, or freeze, control versus chaos, the different romantic patterns revealing deep wounds and unprocessed grief. There's the emotional impact of their childhood home. You know, it's filled with love and books and abundance, and this deeply shapes how they see the world. Then the mental health awareness from grief to diagnosis. They talk about how the trauma manifests and how there's stigma that still lingers around it. They talk about the female empowerment and community healing, the final acts of the coven and the women coming together and reminding us of the power of the collective healing and chosen family. And ultimately, the film, you know, they talk about how the film illustrates the transformative power of embracing identity and rewriting narratives. And at the end, which I love, is they talk about they humanize these characters as if they were coming to them for therapy. So how they would handle treatment, specific treatment for these people.
Right.
And yeah, I really love listening to their breakdowns. They have other movies I've listened to: Big Fat Greek Wedding they just did, Princess Mononoke, which is a Studio Ghibli, Fight Club, Midsummer, Fried Green Tomatoes, The Shining, so many. Yeah. And we tickle the bounds of, you know, psychological stuff here on the show and what could be going through the characters' minds, what certain choices could stem from, you know, certain trauma responses, nature versus nurture. But like, this is kind of a milestone for me to speak to the host of Popcorn Psychology and get like a professional opinion.
Yeah.
And I think I've been pretty open here on the show with, you know, how much I really support, like go to a therapist if you can afford it, because it's amazing. Now, as they like to say on their own show, even though they are licensed therapists, their podcast and ours is purely for entertainment purposes. While they are therapists, they are not your therapist. And if you're struggling with your mental health or experiencing some symptoms, please consult your local health providers. But truly, as somebody interested in psychology and mental health, it's been high on my list to get to chat with Brittany and Hannah. So I'm bummed we can't talk to Ben, but holding him here on Magnolia Street still. And I think our very first episode dropped in season 1, and I was DMing them like, y'all, can we talk about practical magic again? And of course they said yes. But, you know, it took 117 episodes for us to get our shit together. It's not like they were like, oh, we don't have time. We just had all these other things that were lining up beforehand.
But you know what? It's all about the divine timing. I'm glad we were a little more seasoned into the podcast thing before we talk to like licensed professionals.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, so I'm kind of glad things happened as they should. So everything happens as, you know, when the time is right. I remember you sending me this episode back in 2020, and I found the text 2 days ago because I was looking through our text for the Midnight Margarita stuff, because we did the song-sode last week, right? So I was looking for Midnight Margarita stuff, and I came across a text from then when you sent me.
Wow.
I went
you
back.
Have everything.
Yeah. I have shit on everybody, so just
watch out.
Just don't fuck me over. No.
Receipts.
Exactly. You gotta keep the receipts. I don't even like keep them for like that purpose. I just like having a backlog of conversations because I forget.
Yeah.
And I like, you know, as somebody who like, you know, writes music and like, because we're collaborating, I like to have that memory log of what, you know, we talk about. So
absolutely.
You sent me this back in 2020 before we were even podcasters. So I thought it was so fascinating. I had never heard anyone unpack that movie from a psychological standpoint, or any movie for that matter from a psychological standpoint. So I was just blown away by all the revelations and discoveries that I made as a result of listening to that episode. For example, like when they talked about the scene where Jillian asks Sally, "Do you forgive our mother?" I don't think I ever put two and two together that Jillian was alluding to the fact that their mother had taken her own life until I listened to that episode. I had always just thought that Jillian meant, like, do you forgive our mother for dying in general and leaving them at such a young age through no fault of her own? Like, because, like, when you're young and you lose a parent, I would imagine, even if it were due to natural causes, there would still be those feelings of abandonment regardless of the cause, you know? So I thought she was just talking about her mother's death from, like, a generic standpoint. I didn't put the two and two together that, yeah, she took her own life. So I guess I was just horrible at reading between the lines, because, like, you know, I saw this movie as a teenager, so for the first time anyway. And then, like, you know, the more you watch it, certain lines don't, like, you know, you don't pay attention to certain things. You kind of just have it on in the background because it's a comfort movie. So I never really, like, dwelled on those lines too much. I just kind of, like, took it at face value. So I was like, oh my God. Okay. So that's kind of one of the revelations that I took away from their episode. And I actually did listen to it again to prep for this episode and this interview with them. And it's so interesting listening to it this time around through the lens of talking about nothing but this movie for the past 3 years and hearing their theories and opinions after you and I have already gone down our own rabbit holes and breakdowns and analyses of all these characters, personalities, and traumas. So I just think this chat that we're about to have with them is going to be very juicy.
It is. Yeah, agree.
Yeah. And then I also do want to mention that as somebody who is obsessed with studying the tarot and Carl Jung and his concepts of the archetypes and his whole intertwining with psychology and the esoteric, I am just really excited to ask them some questions about the connection between those two realms, the psychological realm and the esoteric realm, because they do cross over quite a lot. You wouldn't think that they do, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'm really excited too.
Yeah.
Their analysis of practical magic back in 2020 brought so much depth and clarity and compassion to the film's, like, darker corners. And we know through our research, Griffin Dunn was going to take it even darker. It really humanizes the fictional characters, I think, and framing it back into the spotlight of everyone's got their own shit.
So without further ado, please welcome Brittany Brownfield and Hannah Espinoza of Popcorn Psychology.
Good morning.
Hi. Morning.
How y'all doing?
Good.
Well, thank you for hanging out with us this morning. We kind of already did, like, a little intro, and we just want to say how excited to finally get to talk to you. I can't believe that. I told Justina it was probably episode 1. I was like, cool, we're finally a podcast. Let me contact Popcorn Psychology and see if they want to talk with us about practical magic.
Of course. Thanks for thinking of us and allowing us to yap about this movie.
Yeah, we're so excited to be sitting down with the incredible team from Popcorn Psychology, Brittany and Hannah, for a special conversation during Mental Health Awareness Month.
Please feel free to introduce yourselves. We love to ask how practical magic found each of you and what it means for you today.
So I'm Hannah Espinoza. I've been with Popcorn Psychology for 7 years. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor in the city of Chicago. I own my own practice. I'm the only one who works there. Practical magic, I saw it in movie theaters when it came out because I was a girl, because I'm older than probably everybody here. And it just felt like this was something that I need in my life. I remember feeling that way, and I remember feeling like I want to live in that house. I want to have those things. And not all the ghost and the drama, not so much, but
Give
some of
me
the other
garden,
stuff for sure.
give me the food, give me the candles.
Yes, exactly.
That greenhouse.
So, exactly. Oh my God, I would love to have a greenhouse. I would have so many things in there.
Kristina's living the dream over there. She's got a nice greenhouse.
It's
Jealous.
full of aphids right now.
Oh no.
The problems of magical living.
Always.
More practical than magical.
And practical magic is a comfort film now. It's a comfort film. It always has been. I watch it We watch it during spooky season, which starts in September sometimes. I just really enjoy it, and really, it's just a really fun, beautiful movie. And I'm getting ready to read all the books
Oh, nice.
that go
Awesome.
with everything. So that should be really fun.
Are you going to read them chronologically?
Yeah.
So my name's Brittany Roundfield. I'm also one of the co-hosts of Popcorn Psychology. I am also an LCPC working out of Chicago. I work for a private practice. And I do regular schmegular like talk therapy. So like seeing clients weekly. How did I find Practical Magic? I mean, think it was like 10 or 11 when it came out. So I can't even tell you like how I discovered it, other than I probably rented it from Blockbuster at a certain point.
Yeah.
Because like Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman was also probably just like a understood thing to rent it. I believe I read the book when I was a teenager and I hated it because it wasn't exactly like the movie.
Right.
And then I listened to it again when I was older, and I was able to like appreciate it more as its own story. It's a lot more like other Alice Hoffman books, which is like very more grounded in the experience of being a woman, not necessarily like the fanciful parts that the movie kind of pulls from.
Yeah.
And then I listened to, I think, Rules of Magic, the one where it's Fanny, Jet, and their brother. I listened to that like 2 or 3 years ago. So I want to read all the rest of them as well. I just haven't. I have a to read list that's like, this bookcase is just books I have owned that I haven't read yet.
That list gets so
Exactly.
long.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Exactly the same with my bookcase behind me. I haven't read any of those books.
Oh my God.
They're all on the list.
Book
Yeah.
Dragons Unite.
So how did you guys find each other, and what gave you the idea to create Popcorn Psychology and I guess the concept behind the show?
Well, Hannah and I's meet cute is that we worked at the same job. The therapy world's actually very small, even though we are in a big city. So I moved to Chicago in 2014. I started working at a job in like a month later, and then Hannah and I became friends 3 days into that job. Like literally, we went out for, it just happened to be like a work drink event the first weekend I worked there, and Hannah and I hung out till like 3 a.m. that night. So we became friends like
That's
instantaneously
awesome.
almost.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, it's a very small world. So our other co-host, Ben, who can't be with us today because he's at work, he and I were at the same orientation at one of our jobs. And then like almost like 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from the private practice he worked at trying to see if I want to work there as well. So he and I just like serendipitously worked at 2 jobs at the same time. And then Hannah and I worked the other job, and then we've worked at multiple jobs together because it's one of those things where you all, you know.
So then I started working at the private practice that Ben and Brittany worked at. And that's how I met Ben. And he was my supervisor. And then I stopped working at that job and went and was a nanny for a year because I needed a break, and came back and then worked with a job again with Ben and Brittany at the same agency, but in a different capacity.
I was saying, technically the podcast is Ben's idea, though I hate to say that because he does not listen to podcasts, and he will not listen to this one, which is why I can say whatever I want.
Had any of you done any podcasting before, or YouTubing or anything like that?
No, we had never done anything like that. Ben's got an entrepreneurial spirit, so he's done a lot of like, I guess, side quests in his life, and some that he's still doing.
When's his birthday?
He's a Gemini man.
Yeah, he's a Gemini. It's infuriating, actually.
It is
The
actually
worst.
infuriating.
Tell me
And-
about it. I know Kristina's Gemini.
Changeable nature. And I'm a Virgo moon, so I'm like, can you just like stick to the schedule? Can you just stick to the plan? You're driving me nuts. And anyway, so I was a very big podcast listener, and I've been a podcast listener. I used to download them onto my iPod Nano. So like back in the day. So the idea of starting a podcast was a very fun idea to me because I was like, that's crazy. Because I was still like, 7, 8 years ago when, there were still already a lot of people doing podcasts, but it wasn't like it is now where there's like celebrities and like, it feels like everybody is a podcast. It still felt like podcasting was something that like special people did. And no, we were always talking about movies and stuff like that. And he likes to tell the story that we were all talking about The Last Jedi a lot at the office, the three of us, and he wanted to take that basically to the masses, that idea, because it was such a royally, well, it's a divisive movie that at the time a lot of people were getting their rocks off saying that they hated it and they were so mad about it. And me, Ben, and Hannah were all simultaneously like, what? That movie is great. Like, what's everyone complaining about? And so that inspired the podcast. It's our very first episode as well, talking about The Last Jedi.
And y'all are seeing it through a different lens that not everybody see, especially Jess and I were introing, and we said until we listened back to your Practical Magic episode again, because we heard it the first time before we had a show, and then, you know, prepping for this episode, we listened to it again and we're like, oh my God, it makes total sense. Like, we didn't even think about that at the time, but you just kind of see these things through different lenses, and you have that special niche of, you know, the professional background that you chose, and humanizing these fictional characters that maybe somebody in that situation in their real life doesn't realize that they're in, but they love this movie and they're like, oh my God, that's exactly what I'm experiencing. So I just think y'all are amazing.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet.
So the last time that you guys explored the emotional heart of Practical Magic, that was quite some time ago. I think it was 2020, right? So, but before we dive even deeper, can you please tell us what was it about this film in particular that piqued your interest or made you want to unpack it from a psychological standpoint?
Oh, well, Hannah and I are always just trying to talk about movies that we like.
Yeah.
Poor Ben.
Practical Magic felt like a gift Hannah gave me. Hannah does the scheduling. That was 2020, so it was obviously a very tough year. We did like 4 spooky season movies, which is my favorite thing, and usually we just barely manage to do 2. And so honestly, we picked Practical Magic because we wanted to talk about it as much as we possibly
talk
could,
about it,
which
and
is
we love
why
it.
I understand your guys' podcast. And because we knew there'd be stuff to talk about. There's a lot of family stuff, if not just like the generational curse and the fact that their mom like clearly died of suicide. So there was already stuff in there that we knew we could talk about.
Before I listened to your episode, I didn't even like put 2 and 2 together that she had committed suicide, because Jillian asks, do you forgive our mother? And I just always thought she was talking from like a generic standpoint, like there's probably some abandonment, like feelings of abandonment that would come from losing a parent as a child. So I thought she just meant it from like that standpoint, but I never even put the 2 and 2 together that she had committed suicide until I listened to your podcast. I was like, oh my God, what? I've been watching this movie
Mind
for
blown.
years. Yeah, I've had so many revelations from listening to your episodes. So I think that was just really fascinating.
Well, Brittany, you had mentioned the books, and our questions today, I didn't even consider the books. I was just going off of the movie, and I think because you said the book is almost a whole different story. And now that she has 3 other ones, oh my God. Do you guys want to come back and keep talking about the books later on down the line? Because it's just a whole different rabbit hole to go down.
No, I would love to do that.
I would love to. I love talking about Practical Magic.
Yeah, we'll send you a message when oh God, who knows, when we finally like read all the books. Yeah. I just last night had to make a prioritized book list because I was getting overwhelmed by the books that I'm currently reading.
I'm reading like 6. I gotta cut down.
There's 10 on my list.
Too many.
Are they like a lot of fictional novels, or do you have like a lot of like other kinds of stuff in there too that you like to read?
I read some fiction, but mostly right now I'm reading a lot of books about complex PTSD, about internal family systems. So I'm reading books that are more therapy related and kind of like getting more and more perspective. I work with a lot of people who have complex PTSD. And so I try to always kind of keep up on whatever the newest thing is or whatever I think will be the most helpful.
I was gonna say, I force myself to read a nonfiction concurrently with whatever fun book I'm reading. And I also just ask Hannah about what she's reading.
I wanted to ask, before we get into Practical Magic, has there been an episode that's really stuck out to you that you think a lot of listeners, you're like, oh, if I'm going to recommend one of my episodes, like check that one out first?
I would recommend the Inside Out episodes. We just dropped our second, the Inside Out 2 film. Those are really incredibly well done in terms of all of the information that you get is neuroscience. Truly, like all of it is really good. So I feel like our Inside Out episodes, I feel like one of our first episodes that we did, Psycho, was really fun. And really, we just kind of like just made up some stuff and just kind of rolled with it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Psycho is really good. And then I feel like
our Shining episode
Our Shining episode is good too.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're totally right, Brittany.
Yeah, Psycho and Shining are both so high psychological thrillers. Those were both my favorite. We had just talked about Norman Bates for some reason.
We did, yeah. Norman Bates did come up in a conversation recently.
We were
But
doing tarot. I think we were talking about the
yeah.
queen, one of the queen cards. I just listened to your Big Fat Greek Wedding episode as well. This isn't one of our questions, but just thinking about like family enmeshment and stuff like that. And I was thinking, does this Owens family kind of have a little bit of that? They're not so much up each other's asses where they can't really function without the other, but you know, that kind of the link there was interesting to listen to. I love the movie and I love the episode you guys put out.
I don't know if I would say that they're enmeshed. This is making me think of Hannah and I like talked through the questions that you guys gave us the other day, and when we got to your questions about the aunts and how they influenced the girls and their development, I don't think they don't feel like an enmeshed family to me so much as I think that they're a family that keeps to themselves because of just the social isolation within the town, but also I think the aunts are pretty isolated and they don't really it doesn't seem like they encourage the girls to like get out there and to be social with the townsfolk. It also doesn't seem like they change anything about how they are to better accommodate having kids in their home, that they want to do well socially with the kids in town. So I don't think there's so much enmeshed because other than the spell they do on Sally, which is pretty intense, they don't really try. It doesn't seem like the aunts try, like they don't seem like they're trying to keep like Jilly at home, you know what I mean? Like they seems like they kind of let the girls do their own thing. And I think that the only thing that's like the more on the, I guess, toxic end of them is the fact that it doesn't seem like they are mindful of their traumatized worldview and trying to wiggle that for the benefit of having children in their home. Like it doesn't seem like they're people that were like, okay, like we have to mindfully change our lifestyle because we're going to have two little traumatized kids living with us. It seems like they were like, you girls can come live with us and we're just going to keep doing our thing with you guys in tow. Almost like in some ways like the opposite of enmeshed in some ways. It's like they're kind of like doing their own thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like they're more of a family that has a lot of family secrets and a family that is everybody really keeps their thoughts and feelings to themselves because in a lot of ways it's not comfortable or safe for them to share themselves with the world. And I think that really has an impact on them even sharing with each other. I mean, even some of the conversations that Jilly and Sally have, some of those conversations are like, why haven't y'all talked about this before? Why is this just coming up now? And not so much like the question that Sally asked to, or the question that Jilly asked to Sally, but just more of, it seems like now that they're adults, it's okay to talk about things, which happens a lot when you're in a family where there's a lot of family secrets and a lot of just nobody is kind of allowed to really express themselves in the family openly.
But I will say, well, now that I've read the prequel, I can't keep the aunts straight. Their names is always, now it's like confusing to me. Which one's Stockard Channing?
Franny.
Okay. In that, and I think what they have a trouble with, like if I was working with them, is they want to keep all these like family secrets, like you're saying, Hannah, but then they have all their like emotional trauma stuff. So then like when they're at breakfast and she's like, what about my poor Ethan? It's like, okay, well, you're actually not being very good. Like you're telling the kids probably know the things they shouldn't know, and they don't know the things that they should.
And even Jet at the time is like, it's an accident. Like it's a secret. Like they're both arguing about it.
Yeah, like be quiet. We don't talk about that in front of the girls.
Yeah, is that something like, I don't know, Franny probably shouldn't have trauma dumped all that stuff onto those girls at that age, because that probably, and they're also perpetuating this, you know, this curse that this family has been burdened by for centuries, and now they're kind of passing it along to these little girls, and them kind of having that in the back of their minds as kids and into adulthood. I'm sure that like really did some pretty lasting damage.
It's their own version of like the talk. It's not the birds and the bees talk. It's like, your husband's gonna die. But
And also I feel like even if we think about Sally as a little girl, like she doesn't seem like she's in distress in the film, right? When she's making that spell. But if we take a step back and really think about that, this is a little kid who feels so distressed that they feel like they have to make a spell so that they don't fall in love, so their husband doesn't die. Like she's a little girl when she does that. The fact that there was that much fear already in their life about their love experience and what that might be like, I think really dictates their almost like Sally's hopelessness that she has before they put a fucking spell on her and get her with her husband. Like, and that's the only reason why that happened.
I guess let's start with, I mean, we've already kind of started here. The emotional core of the film, which is the grief and the trauma. And in your podcast episode, you guys were talking about their different coping styles. So can you tell us a little bit about those two different coping mechanisms, that because both of the girls are completely different from each other, right?
Yeah, they're both doing the same thing in very opposite directions, which is I'm going to keep myself safe by keeping love at a distance. And Sally's doing it in the more obvious way, like pre the spell. Her aunts do. I infer that she's pretty isolated, that she just kind of probably spends time with the aunts, and they make it sound like she hasn't had any boyfriends or had any sex or whatever when they said we had to pry her legs apart. Just so rude. And I think that just infers like how shut down she was. Like, I'm not letting anybody in, because these girls were raised to believe that love will kill you. I mean, not their dad wasn't the only one to die. Their mom died too. And so she's keeping love afar by having that more like isolated, withdrawn, I guess avoidant, if we're going to use like attachment language. And Jilly goes the opposite direction, which I think people would misunderstand, which is dating probably a lot of guys where she has control. You know, they say like she goes through all these men, you know, when's a guy gonna go through her? And if I want to extrapolate from that, my assumption is that Sally probably, I don't know if she does this consciously, but probably picks guys that she knows that she can. Oh, sorry, Sally is probably Jilly. Damn it. She probably picks guys that she can railroad in some way, or like picking guys that are obsessed with her, but she's not necessarily obsessed with them. And like I said, I don't think she is necessarily doing that consciously. You know, she might think that that is love, like finding a guy that's like obsessed with you, but it does allow her to be in control in her own way. Like she gets to decide like when the relationship ends and all that kind of stuff, which is, yeah, her not falling into that trap too.
I think we had a Jillian character analysis, and I think, Jess, you brought this up, that maybe she's doing this in order to protect these men. Like, I care for you, but I'm not going to stay with you because I don't want you to, succumb to this curse.
Oh,
she's always doing the leaving.
That's right.
Maybe it's for their benefit, and she doesn't, we don't see it that way usually, but I think we had that theory at one point.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I do remember talking about that.
I could definitely see that as a possibility. I think the other thing that the movie shows is that trauma, the same trauma affects people in different ways. And there isn't one person or one way to respond to a trauma. I think in a lot of ways, this is a very accurate portrayal of how siblings can react to the same thing. It's just how we take it in and how we understand it and how it shapes who we are and who we believe we are. And so that would make a lot of sense that that's a part of Jilly's, I was going to say idealization, but I don't think that's the right word, whatever.
Motivation.
Yeah, maybe motivation.
Yeah. Yes. Motivation. Yeah, that's great. So I really feel like I think that's a definite possibility that she's protecting the men that she's in relationships, and also at the same time keeping them at arm's length so she doesn't get hurt either.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean in a way maybe she thinks that Jimmy is the one because she says he's so much stronger than the curse?
Yeah, I think the Jimmy thing, puts a wrench in the works of what we're saying, which then makes me kind of wonder if Jilly's doing that thing, which people also can do when they have chaotic, traumatic family, especially their parents' relationship, is misconstrue passion and chaos and danger as love, and find healthy relationships boring, just because how I always describe it to clients is your tolerance for chaos and passion was like calibrated really high as a kid. So when you go to a healthy dynamic, it's going to feel boring because it's not lighting up all the whole switchboard in your brain. And so I do wonder, because of how she picks Jimmy and how she talks about Jimmy, is, you know, maybe she also has that rewiring as well, which is that like, this is what love's supposed to be like. Like our parents were so in love that it killed them, and how exciting that is, how romanticized that could be, especially because they were so young. And then they saw all these women and stuff in town go to their aunts and like be like, I'm so in love with this guy, I'll kill a bird.
Yeah.
You know, like like I'll stab a bird in the heart. So I think we also see how that falls into different places with the girls. Whereas, like I said, Jilly definitely could have taken that in of like, look how crazy love is. And it's so exciting. And the person you end up with should go so crazy about you that they might hurt you. And Sally goes the other direction, which is probably more how I would do, which is like, this looks crazy and horrible, and I want nothing to do with it. Which is why I think also when her husband dies, she goes back to that pattern of behavior. Like, I'm going to go to my aunt's house, I'm going to hide in my room and not talk to anybody.
Probably also why when Jillian came to visit her and like she's like explaining her life with Michael before he passed, and she's like, oh, a lot of this is really boring to you, because she knows how like chaotic Jillian's love life is. So she's like, oh, you know, this perfect little ideal marriage in a small town is probably like nothing that she even wants to hear about.
Because in the next scene, she's like, we're just like bats and worshiping each other, and I gotta drug him. And Sally's like, the fuck? Like, you don't have to do that. Even in her grief, she can see red flags that, you know, Jillian cannot see.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I feel like even as little girls, we see that scene where that woman comes and stabs that bird, that poor bird. And, you know, and Sally says, I hope I never fall in love. And Jilly says, I can't wait to fall in love. And that's such an indicator of how of the directions that they go in. And again, I think that just makes a lot of sense in terms of every individual. Even if I have people that I work with who have had different kinds of trauma and different kinds of experiences, there is like a set of different ways that we deal with that in our regular life. And a lot of times people do go one of a couple of different ways. And I think this really highlights that piece.
Yeah. When they're sitting on those stairs, I think when the whole dove thing happens, Jillian is seeing like you have the power to manipulate or be in control. And through the whole movie, even as a child, Sally we see her blow on the candle and she's excited. But as soon as she sees something hurt or injured or killed, you know, it's probably bringing back the memory of her parents. But through the whole movie, she's afraid of power, her power, you know, the power of love. But I think that's also a little bit there too.
Yeah. And it's interesting because Sally's very skittish about it. And then Jilly, they make a point of letting it known that Jilly seemed a little jealous of Sally and really wants Sally's power. So, and then I mean, I can go to a whole bigger conversation about like, are they the way they are and the way they've dealt with things because of also how they are treated differently by the aunts. Like, it's very clear that the aunts take Sally very seriously magically, and they don't take Jilly seriously. And then they even make the joke later that Jilly's power is being, you know, sexually provocative with men.
I think that's why earlier when the doorbell rings, when Irene comes to the back door and Jillian's like, what about me? And they're like, don't worry, Jilly Bean, your power will come in due time. And they give each other like the eye, because they probably know once she matures, that's gonna be her power. You know?
But it's like so over her head as a kid. Like, why would you say
Yeah.
that in front of a 9-year-old?
Because they I think it was like they were alluding to it, but they didn't like say it outright, but they gave each other the eye, so you kind of like knew what they meant.
Yeah.
Well, that's another example of the aunts like maybe not having the best boundaries around
holding
kids.
Information.
They're more.
Well, I think more just like, you don't, just because you know that doesn't mean the kids should hear that. They don't know what to do with that information.
Mm-hmm.
And how the adults view kids will also shape their identity, you know, and how, especially like two girls very close in age, it's already going to be really hard for them not to compare themselves to each other. And especially since they're in such an a niche, isolating experience, not just the parents dying, but the way they're treated by the town. I would love to know more about like where they lived and how they lived pre their parents' death, because also you go into this town that you're not familiar with, where everyone fucking hates your guts and you don't even know them. But then you have these aunts that are having like such a divided. I wouldn't be shocked if they treated them both very differently based on maybe what they saw in the future, but you can't do that to kids. Like you can't project your adult insight onto them.
They probably didn't ask for that role either. Like, you know, these kids were just dumped on their porch basically, and they're like, all right, well, I guess we have to raise children now. Like, look at their lifestyle. I don't think they were planning on having any kids in that house, like, ever.
They got the chocolate down, and they're like, we'll just throw sweets at this situation.
Yeah.
And we'll get on with our lives.
Yeah, they did what they thought they were supposed to do, I guess.
We had the question, could Jillian's behavior align with disinhibited attachment or trauma bonding? As far as, like in terms of a diagnosis, how would you describe what's happening to each of them?
Like as a kid?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's hard because we don't see enough of them as kids. They don't act in a way that I think is wildly problematic as kids. They seem like they're just two kids trying to deal. Like seeing them as kids, I would just want to make sure they have someone that they can talk to. And I'd also want to make sure I talk to the aunts about how they are supporting both girls outside of the home. Like, what are they saying? What are they doing? How are they trying to socialize them? Just being more aware of maybe their influence on the girls is very vulnerable. Well, at being a very vulnerable age and also at a very vulnerable life transition. Because I don't know if I would diagnose, like thinking of her through adulthood, is I don't even know if I would diagnose her with anything, because you can't diagnose someone with like being like a trauma-informed fuckboy. Like that's not a diagnosis. It's more just like a way of dealing. It's a way of coping. Because I don't even know if I would say she is PTSD, because she doesn't have any, neither of them really have any of those symptoms from like their childhood experiences. I think she's just someone that I would have to do work with her about, like exploring how her childhood experiences have now influenced her relationship patterns as an adult. And I don't know if there's like really a diagnosis I would slap on that. I think it's more, just building. She's someone that you wish there was a way that people could get their therapy paid for, just to like encourage their insight and personal growth. But there unfortunately isn't a way for insurance to pay for that. You do have to slap a diagnosis on her. So I don't know if I would give her adjustment or something like that. But like, because disinhibited attachment is something I think of more when I work with kids, and she doesn't really show those either. Because when I work with kids who had like reactive attachment disorder, the kids that had the more disinhibited presentation, those are the kids that would never met a stranger. They would say like, I love you really quickly. They were very eager to share intimacy with others in a way that was not appropriate and dangerous. Like when I worked with more, because I would say part of my background is I worked at a partial hospital programs, which is sort of like therapy school. Like kids would go there instead of school. So 30 hours a week of therapy. And so I saw more extreme cases of this. And those were the kind of kids where sometimes they'd be like hypersexual at a very young age. They would be very aware of me, like observing them. They would tell me they love me after like our second session. They would sometimes try to take their clothes off. They would try to hug everybody. Like they would go up to strangers and like I said, like say like, hey, what's up? Or like,
picturing like very cuddly, like wanting to hold your hand and just being very, very clingy.
But those are also kids that typically have been in the system, have had they've been passed around to a certain degree, whether it's passed around because they're in the system, foster system, or because their parents were neglectful. So they would get passed around by different adults just to take care of them or to not take care of them, to neglect them. And so also the Sally and Jilly don't really have that. They had just had one massive, it seems like pretty close together, like one huge massive double loss, and then went to live with their aunts. So in that way, that history is actually not that, it sounds weird to say, like it's not as bad as it could have been, or as the ones I've seen. Like they would probably have more of that stuff if like they had gone to maybe like 4 other relatives or something before they ended up at the aunts. And then it would be like, ooh, like there's
a whole different story.
Yeah, they're going to be more vulnerable to develop like extreme versions of these attachment things we're talking about, because the other version of it, which is inhibited, which is more like, I guess Sally's like a light version of that, is like, don't say I love you to like anybody, very skittish. I used to describe them in a very loving way as like stray cats. Like you can't get too close to them. You can't tell them you like anything. Like the kind of kids where if you give them a compliment, they will kind of lose it, because they're so avoidant of getting attached to anyone or anybody. So as a kid, you have to be very careful, like to warm up, like you have to really play it slow. So I guess I'm just saying all that sort of like is psycho ed, that I honestly don't think, and you can let me know if you disagree, Hannah, but I think Jilly just has like bad relationship patterns that she would just have to work on figuring out, like where she's engaging in her own like avoidant or unhealthy beliefs about relationships, about love, about herself, and what she is capable of.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I feel like we don't have enough information about either one of them. One of the big aspects of diagnosing someone is that it has to be affecting their life in a negative way. So Jilly has, adapted and become this person. And she, until she's in an abusive relationship, doesn't seem to be expressing a lot of distress or like it was ruining her life or any of those pieces. So I totally agree. I think adjustment disorder is probably the thing that makes the most sense for her. And I think when we talk about Sally is also, again, like maybe not enough information that we have about her, but also I think the thing that is hitting her the most is bereavement. And bereavement isn't really like a diagnosis. We can have, I think there is some like weird, like prolonged grief or something. There's like some weird code that you can use, but for her, I think it would be more of she's experiencing bereavement after experiencing major bereavement as a young person. So I feel like it would be really hard to diagnose either one of them with something more serious. And I know one of the questions that we haven't talked about is about complex PTSD. And one of the things I wanted to make sure to bring up is that complex PTSD is not in the DSM-5. The DSM is the therapy/insurance Bible. And that's how we have to have a code in order to get paid. So that's how that works. But complex PTSD is a new idea. I don't think it's a new idea to therapists who have worked with people who have trauma for a long time, but it's a new idea, and it's not even in the DSM-5 because it's such a new concept that it isn't in anything. So even if we wanted to say this is what equals complex PTSD, there aren't any, for lack of a better way to say it, it's more of people who have prolonged, consistent traumatic experiences over a period of their life.
And it's not diagnosable?
It is. You just diagnosed with PTSD.
Okay, but you can't like claim that on in like insurance. You're saying for insurance purposes you couldn't claim
No,
that.
complex PTSD does not have a way to get paid for it.
Do you see it having one day?
Oh, absolutely. There's no way that that's not going to get added. There's no way. Except for the people who write that shit are, old white men. So who the fuck knows? Yeah. Maybe never. Yeah. What I do is I diagnose PTSD chronic. So you have chronically had PTSD for most of your life, and based on all of these different experiences that you've had.
Mm-hmm. Do you see any of the adults in this film purposefully seeking out therapy? Or do you think that they would just kind of continue on with their existence? Or do any of them show signs of like, they probably make healthy decisions and they would, want to further their mental health?
I mean, Alex and Kylie might.
That's true.
They're the right generation.
They're probably the most.
They're not dealing with this anymore.
The most likely. Well, and because also when I think of Jilly and I think of Sally, it's like they're also not in a ton of distress. Like Sally's opening her business. Like, yes, she lost her husband. She's managing to deal with that loss, but she's opening her business. She's a part of the PTA. She's created this life that she, wanted. And so in a lot of ways, like, I don't know that they would even feel like they needed to go to therapy.
I think the aunts could, but they probably definitely wouldn't because they're so secretive.
It's definitely not.
They feel like I've worked with many a family where it is like you can tell it feels like sacrilegious that they are like having to work with a therapist.
Yeah.
And that you can tell that there's like this understanding of like not telling. It's more like not so much secret keeping as much as it's like we're not going to tell these people our business, and that being a social norm.
We both come from European families, right?
Catholics.
And like the older generation, like they're very tight-lipped about all that stuff, and it's like there's such a stigma around mental health, and like they just brush it under the rug and act like it never happened.
I
And
think Jet would be down for therapy. I think she'd be excited to go and just have somebody to talk to.
I know Franny would probably, well, I don't know. Franny was the one that was kind of like dumping all her shit on the girls during the breakfast scene.
But what does she need therapy for when she's got kids to do it to?
I guess you're right.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the
And-
thing. Like it would
Yeah.
be much different if Jet and Franny were super depressed, then they weren't able to do their magic, let's say, or they weren't able to, be the person they wanted to be. I think sure, maybe there'd be a possibility, but they seem pretty fucking content.
Well,
in
they
a lot of
also
ways.
have their like coven, I guess, that we don't really see in the movie, but they reference going away. So they do have a support system that maybe they do utilize to talk about this stuff. But I would say I can't see them going to therapy. It would just be really uncomfortable for them in, like I said, like more of like a cultural norm sort of way. And I would hope that Jilly would. I think Jilly could really benefit from going to therapy, especially because by the end of the movie, she's trying to be different. I feel like in the book, there's more of that, if I remember correctly. It's been so long since I listened to the book or read the book. But I feel like in the book, she's having more of like an identity thing where she's trying to be like good, quote unquote, and be settled, and she can't quite pull it off. So I would say Jilly probably could use therapy in the sense of it might not be as easy as you think to behave. And I think that's how she would think of it, as like, I need to behave and settle down and be good. And that there's a reason why she hasn't up to this point, and she can't necessarily just make it happen, like kind of cold turkey, especially because I think after all the Jimmy stuff, she could definitely probably get PTSD after that, because that was hella traumatic, just being with someone like that, period. But then Hannah and I were talking about when we were yapping about it the other day, that she tries to leave him so many times in the course of the movie and keeps getting pulled back in, like literally and metaphorically by him. And so that's really scary. The idea that this really dangerous person, she had to run from him multiple times. And I would say, kind of like thinking about trauma, I would say the only thing that Jilly has maybe potential for would be like borderline personality disorder. And I'm saying that very carefully because that is a diagnosis that gets thrown around a lot lately in a very villainous way. But that is something that's actually being reconsidered as a trauma diagnosis, like in maybe the next edition of the DSM, because it is a trauma reaction. Like it's the kind of what I was describing earlier, where you have developed like trauma belief systems around relationships, like trauma influenced belief systems about relationships. And I could say like she might have, depending on how she dealt with being back with the family and just trying to be quote unquote good, like behave, I'd be curious how much she's able to pull that off. And that might be more what influences, does she have something more going on? If she really can't slow herself down, if she really can't like stay single, if she really can't tolerate, because I think that's what happens in the book, right? Like she tries to date like a good guy and doesn't like it.
Ben Fry.
His name is Ben.
Okay.
Yeah. And she like doesn't want to corrupt him. She's like, I don't deserve that kindness. And she's afraid that that's the Jimmy love is the love that is normal.
Yeah. I was going to say, and that's really more how borderline can show up in a way that if we can actually look at it empathetically and not in the way that we talk about it in society, is really having a very negative like view of yourself and having a really fragile, sometimes even like non-existent sense of self. And so you're looking outward all the time to figure out who you are, or to confirm who you are. And that's why these like relationships, like romantic relationships, become so important. And when someone loses, like if they get broken up with or something, they like fall fucking apart. It's because it's not just like this guy's leaving me, but he's taking my identity with him, and who am I? And so I think for her, that's what she might struggle with, like what you're talking about the book, like of, does she believe that she deserves someone who is nice? Does she feel like she deserves people who are mean to her? And or that idea of like that passion and obsession, like does she need someone who is so over the top, like enmeshed with her, like obsessed with her, because that'll finally be enough to prove to myself that I'm not a piece of shit.
We've talked on here that Jillian can probably chameleon herself, and maybe why she's drawn to Jimmy is because he is strong and dangerous and can protect her, even though, she really needs protection from him. But Justin and I have also talked about in the movie, she's got the snake tattoo. And we don't see the tattoo until after she's met Jimmy. And we were like, is this kind of, because we've done it like a blood magic kind of ritual. Was that some kind of like, just what were you calling it?
It bonded them in some way.
Oh.
Like a blood pact.
Like like sealing that blood pact because they both got maybe the same tattoo, or maybe he even tattooed her.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know the story with the tattoo, but we were just kind of throwing some theories out there about that whole thing.
Jilly does feel like someone who would mix her boyfriend's blood in with the tattoo ink and then get that tattoo ink on her.
Angelina Jolie, Billy Bob Thornton.
Oh my God, 100%.
Yeah. That's not a bad theory. And then how it's like she can't quite shake Jimmy once he's even dead because he tried to brand her. I mean, like they are, that's the
and then here's another interesting bit that we also picked up. After they had expelled his spirit from her in the exorcism scene, the next time we see her is in the garden when she brings Sally the letter from Gary when they burn the brambles, and then again at the end of the film twice, right? In the garden with the beets when she's got her garden wear on, and then at the end of the film when they're wearing the black cloaks to jump off the roof. Every single one she's covered head to toe in sleeves. We don't see that tattoo anymore, so it's no longer having a hold on her. That's my theory.
Yeah. So smart.
Absolutely.
But that is really interesting to know, like, there's still new, quote unquote, diagnoses that haven't even made it into your regulation book legally that you can, write a code for to have insurance pay for. That definitely should be, soon. It is. But does that get rewritten or a new issue put out? Like after how many years?
Because we're on the 5th edition, right? Of the DSM?
We're on the 5th edition.
But then they'll also do like 4th edition, TR, like asterisk.
TR.
Oh,
yeah, there is a DSM 5 TR, which is like, we were going to put this in, but we weren't really sure, but now we're sure. So we're going to put it in. And now you have to buy a different version. You're welcome.
Yeah.
So
but really, my understanding of the DSM, Brittany, I don't know if I'm making shit up or if this is really how it goes. I do. I can't remember why. Oh, because I got suckered into buying it when I was
you're supposed to have one.
We are supposed to have one, but whatever. I think as soon as the new one gets put out, they start working on the next one.
Wow.
Like because the neuroscience is changing and the information that we're getting, and even like borderline personality disorder should absolutely be a trauma diagnosis, because that is, people don't come out of the womb with borderline personality disorder. Things have happened to them. Their life, their inside life is truly chaos. They are in a truly chaotic experience all of the time. And putting it with trauma makes all of the sense. Even if something that maybe you might be aware of is like the autism spectrum. When autism became a spectrum, that was a change in the DSM of where you can fall on it. So that was an updated thing that they did. So I think they start working on it as soon as the newest one is sent out.
But that, like, the editions are picking up because there's only been like 5+, and it's been around since what, the 60s? Maybe
At
earlier.
least.
So it does feel
maybe
like
earlier.
We're having more updates in the past few decades.
Wow. Okay.
than like the first initial, which is probably because, like you're talking about, Hannah, that like our understanding of mental health is like picking up like at a rapid speed.
There's this cool overlap of magical thinking and trauma language. So how does magical thinking act as a survival mechanism in the practical magic world?
Essentially, when I thought about that, I thought about how people really need to make meaning from their trauma experience. They really have to create meaning somehow. And I feel like magical thinking is more of a coping mechanism, but also is something. So there's magical thinking, and that happens when we kind of like assume that two things go together that have nothing to do with each other.
Like
right?
parking lot violinists.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's a coping skill that maybe will be impactful. We do use something in therapy called the magic wand question, which is where we ask if you had if we're really stuck with somebody and they're really having a hard time kind of describing what their goals are, like what they really want to work on, we say, well, okay, so let's imagine there's a magic wand and all of the things that you're worried about or whatever have disappeared. What does that look like? So that's something that's like a little bit different that we do with the magic wand question. And then usually from there, we can create goals. We can figure out what the person is really like, what's the most important thing to them. You can also do values work with them as well. But I think in terms of magical thinking being a survival mechanism, I don't know that those two things necessarily correlate.
Well, I mean, and you could make the argument, like, I'm about to be so hardcore. Is religion magical thinking that we do to deal? Like as like human beings, we really like existentially need things to mean something big, to mean something, to just be meaningful, like you were saying, Hannah, or then what? Like we have a really hard time sitting in the discomfort of like, sometimes bad things just happen. Sometimes we don't have control. We don't have control over a lot of stuff. And that's just what it is. And I think magical, like the idea of like this curse or whatever, or like things happen for a reason, God, things happen for a reason, you know, like the things that people say. I think it allows us a certain level of like existential comfort that does bring people a certain levels of peace. That's why things like religious beliefs are still on and popping, you know, for a lot of people, what they would define as like a positive way, like a supportive way. And I think when we think of like the aunts and the Owen family specifically, the idea, I can see the idea of the curse, like lets them maybe deal with the trauma they've been through. Well, it's just a family curse. And so that's what it is. But I think where that goes bad, kind of where like also religion will take on that very heavy like shame approach. I was raised Catholic, is that it can lead to this magical thinking of connecting to things that don't necessarily connect, can lead to a lot of, like we said, like shame and taking on things as too much of your fault, which you do see, like Sally definitely does, and Franny definitely does, of this idea that like something's bad about us. And so we don't get to deserve like love and happiness because there's something bad about us, which, like I said, isn't an uncommon theme in varied religions. And I think it lets people feel like, well, sometimes they think it gives people permission to not work on stuff. Cause like, I'm not going to go to therapy. Why would I go to therapy? It's a family curse. Like a therapist can't take this curse off of me. So I don't have to work on anything because it just is what it is. Or the other direction, like I said, which you can keep people stuck because they feel like they're bad. Like, well, I did something wrong because if I was being good, then this stuff wouldn't happen to me and bad stuff wouldn't happen to me. And that's not true either. Life is just like unpredictable, chaotic. It's a lot of our control, and we hate the amount of times that's like a thing I talk about with clients. Like we hate that idea. Like as humans, like we fucking hate that idea. Like I could be a perfectly good person and someone like punches me on the street. You know what I mean? Like this idea that like, it's like victim blaming stuff. Like, well, what were you wearing? Because we want to pretend that we live in a world where if I make all the right decisions, good decisions, like nothing bad will happen to me. So if something bad happened to you, it's because you did something wrong, or there's something wrong with your family or your culture or your ethnicity or your sexual orientation or whatever. And that's why bad things are happening to you. But that won't happen to me because I'm doing the right thing.
Like that scene where Sally like is like going off on Jillian. She's like, I had the babies. I got married.
Yeah,
Jillian.
that's true.
I did the right things and this shit's still happening.
Yeah, which I think that's a great example of two girls, two women who approach life very differently. And they're both in that fucking car with a dead body in the back. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
We are all vulnerable to our lives changing drastically because of what one decision we make, because of no decisions we make. I mean, or like the decision that like to walk down that street instead of that one. Like there's a lot of ambiguity in the world.
Right. It's like we always say, is it the curse or is it just life doing its thing? You know?
Yeah, or like self-fulfilling prophecy stuff. Because also the thing with the aunts, right? When you read the book, part of their lore is like, I don't even know if it's technically Ethan, but what they would do is guys that would like the Owens girls would like run across a hill where like there would be lightning strikes to sort of test it. Like it's that stupid stuff teenagers do where they're like, like laugh in the face of danger.
Go into the haunted house.
Sometimes they would get struck by lightning and die.
Playing Bloody Mary. Yeah.
So
Beaches,
like it's Yeah, go ahead.
We had a 5-hour discussion on snakes, and that turned into like the snake handlers of Appalachia. And the
Mm,
whole thought process behind, if you're good with God, you're good with the Holy Spirit, you're not going to get bit. And if
yes.
you do, we'll pray over it. And if he decides to save you, then you're cool. But if not, it was meant to be.
Oh,
You,
This is
well.
you
like
didn't have the Lord in you.
Which is
So that was fascinating
that's meaning
to learn.
making. Like that is us trying to make meaning out of something that probably doesn't have any meaning other than like snakes are dangerous.
Leave
Yeah.
the snakes out of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
I want to talk about Jimmy because he's a hot
Okay.
mess.
Same.
We
All
were
right.
also trying to kind of figure out why is he the way he is? Because we don't know a whole lot about him. He doesn't have a lot of lines in the movie, and they kill him very quickly. So we kind of came up with our own lore that he may or may not have sold his soul to the devil.
Oh.
We don't know, but we're just
Definitely did.
as a and we get a little glimpse that this is not his first time. Neither is the Phoebe Stone character that Gary presents. This is going into serial killer territory, but
Oh, yeah.
obviously abusive, manipulative. What traits do you see that flag him as maybe in the narcissistic category?
I think he's more antisocial.
Mm.
Yeah, but he's surrounded by like all these like dudes
Well,
at that party. He's talking, he's smoking, he's drinking.
well, a key actually like a signifier of someone who's antisocial is being very charming. Like that
Mm.
can be, it's not always like antisocial is also not a monolith. Like some people who are on the antisocial personality disorder APD, they can be more of the stereotypical, I guess what you'd see in like a movie of like a serial killer where they give you the weirds and like they're off-putting and maybe they don't take care of themselves and they live in like a weird environment where they're not living by like any like social rules, right? That are very obvious. And the other flip of it though is you can be very, very charming, especially if someone like Jimmy, who's like very conventionally attractive and probably figured out how to like work that to his advantage. Because a lot of antisocial is more a disregard for social norms and really not like an investment, like an internal investment in codes of conduct that everyone else abides by, just not really feeling like invested in that. And that can be its own like trauma reaction too. Like something kind of breaks your brain when you're a kid and, you just never recover it. Like he'd be one that I'd want to know his childhood because you don't get diagnosed till you're 18, but there's usually a preface of having like maybe the conduct disorder behaviors, which is like the kid version of antisocial where you're hurting animals, like the people typically talk about. You're being like sexually aggressive and provocative. You're not really respecting other people's boundaries. You're argumentative, you have a hard time respecting authority, all that kind of stuff, which goes along with the idea of like not being really invested in social norms, like following like the understood code of conduct of society around you. You just kind of do your own thing.
It's kind
And
of like
yeah.
Jillian and Jimmy are two sides of the same coin almost, because in her own way, she doesn't follow those conventional
Mm-hmm.
stereotypes either, in a certain way.
Yeah, but she's not with antisocial, you are crossing also the boundaries of other people. Like other people don't really feel like other people to you, which I think can be where the crossover with like narcissistic happens. Cause I think narcissistic people who struggle with narcissism, it's the same idea of like other people are kind of sidekicks to the story of me and everything has to come back to me. But with narcissism, there's like a more of like a fragility there and the fact that he is like he's killed multiple people like that is like the height of antisocial where you don't like there's no rules you won't break.
A part of the diagnosis is that you have engaged in crime in some kind of way.
And he's clearly a criminal or a gangster.
Yeah, exactly.
And you said boundaries
like
was another thing. I mean, he wants to go to the bathroom with her.
Yeah.
He wants to follow her to the bathroom.
Yeah, because he probably really like he's really attracted to her probably. Like it's the thing where he owns her now. Like she is his and not in a romantic, sexy, rom-com book way, like in a sort of like, I like you like a toy and I want to play with my toy. And so why are you taking my toy behind a closed door where I can't have it? And that's even different than like people with narcissism I can have more empathy for because they like, I don't know, there can be more of an assumption on their part that they are like lovingly in a relationship with you. And like with antisocial, it's more like you're something I like it's very means to an end, which is probably why when, I don't know, these girls that he was infatuated with or was in a relationship with, I assume once they like were no longer serving that purpose or were going to leave him, maybe he got rid of them, because it's like, you're nothing. Like, you are just what I decide you are.
Yeah.
And so if I'm done with you, then you're done.
So that's why probably when she went to leave him, that's why he was like, all right, then I guess I'll kill you now.
Yeah.
To brand her and then try to kill them. Right?
I'm wondering if Sally and Jilly had left, would he have, we know from the film, I think the books too, that Sally has written Jillian letters, her address is on there. Like, is he one to find her later on? Does that seem like his kind of character, or is he like, okay, well, that's done?
Oh,
Hunt her
what
down.
do you think?
Hunt her
What do you
down.
think, Hannah?
I think he'd find her.
I think he'd find her, or I think it probably would depend on how long it took to find her.
It probably could be one or the other, truly. Like, it probably could be either he looks for her, can't find her,
Gets bored.
gives up, and just moves on to the next victim. Like, that could definitely be something. But I think there's also a part of this ownership of owning someone that no one else can have her. So in a lot of ways, like, I feel like he would go after her. I feel like he would look for a while to find her, but at the same time, they're in a different state. Like, I just don't know what his like time and energy is like,
his car
right?
back. I think he'd want his car back.
Yeah.
More than he'd want her. I think him saying, I want my car back, and then using that as an excuse to like be
come see
violent with her.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could see that. I actually had some questions about more of the spiritual attachment side of Jimmy. So in your professional career, have you guys ever come across a patient that was experiencing a more spiritual attachment, and what kind of diagnosis would you give someone who was claiming to experience having an entity more attached to them, not of the physical plane? How would you deal with that kind of situation?
Like someone who says they're seeing a ghost?
Or some, like, a spiritual attachment to them. Like, yeah, I guess not necessarily
influencing their lives that they can't
yeah,
explain or see.
exactly.
It depends on if they're like, if we're talking about somebody who is seeing delusions, if we're talking about somebody who's experiencing hallucinations, olfactory or whatever kind of different, there's all different kinds of hallucinations, not just the one you see. There's also ones where you can smell something that's not there. You can feel something that's not there. Like, there's all different aspects of hallucinations. And so it would really depend, like, is this a trauma experience? Then a big part of our job is to believe someone when they tell us what they're experiencing. Are you experiencing something where you're hearing a voice that's telling you that you should be doing this or you should be doing that? Then that's something we need to talk about and we need to work on. But it's not my job to pull them into reality, because it's not always the most helpful thing.
And also something I want to say too is it really depends for me on what their spirituality and like cultural background is. Like I said, I'm raised Catholic. You could argue a lot of Catholicism is, pagan-esque, is like, I was raised to believe in like angels and demons and stuff. And so like, if someone came to my office and they're like, well, there's an angel on my shoulder, I wouldn't be like, oh, you're fucking crazy. Like, I would be like, oh, like, what do you mean? Like, tell me more. And also like, I believe in, woo-woo stuff, obviously. And so like, I read tarot cards and I go to psychics occasionally. And so, and I don't think that makes me, that's not what's crazy about me. But so I think first I'd want to know more context about like, what do they mean when they're just talking about like an entity? Like, is it like the ghost of a loved one? Does their family believe in ghosts? Do they believe in ghosts? And also kind of going back to what you were saying, Hannah, too, like, is this distressing you? Like, honestly, if someone was like, I got a ghost that follows me around and we're best friends and it's chill, I'd be like, keep on keeping on. Like, what would you want to talk about in therapy then? So I wouldn't necessarily even diagnose them with like psychosis.
Yeah.
If there was like a cultural understanding of like what they were seeing and saying, if it aligned with their belief system. Now, if it verges into like, because I do have clients that have psychosis, and those clients usually, they know they have psychosis. They're like, oh, sometimes I see things and sometimes I hear things and it's not fun. Like, I've never really met anyone who's actually having psychosis that is enjoying that experience. Like, it's almost always like, anecdotally for me, 100% of the time, it is very distressing and they don't want those things to see. They go on medication for those things usually. And so I never really had a client where they told me that they were like experiencing something like that and it was chill. So
I actually have experienced somebody who who struggles with some hallucinations, and they're kind.
The hallucination is kind to them.
The hallucination is kind to them.
That is refreshing. That's really nice.
Do they think of it as a hallucination?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm thinking of the scene where Jillian's like fitfully sleeping and, you know, maybe she's hearing Jimmy or something, but she gets up, she gets out of bed, she goes to the door, she's looking around like, Jimmy, go away. Like that's distressing for her. And ultimately, she's maybe not losing time, but by the time that they're having this pancake breakfast, is she already feeling out of her own body, out of control? Because she's kind of like doing this coughing thing when the frog is starting to burp up or vomit up the ring. Is like, is Jimmy like already kind of influencing what she's doing? She's not really in full control. If somebody came to you with that backstory,
I mean, I would just think they had really intense PTSD. Like how much of seeing him is, or smelling him or whatever, how much of that is like flashbacks, is, you know, dissociating. Like I would be more assuming it was that realm than even necessarily like psychosis. Like, I mean, the long and the short of it is you can have any diagnosis. Any diagnosis can be so extreme that you develop psychosis. Like you can be so depressed that you develop psychosis. You can be so anxious, yada, yada, yada. So with her, I would just assume that she has such bad PTSD that she's having a hard time distinguishing her like flashbacks or PTSD symptoms from like reality. And that's not wildly uncommon. That's a lot of what flashbacks are. Like when people have flashbacks, they think they're like back there. They think that they see people. Like I have clients who definitely experience that, where they think that they see like their abusive partner out the corner of their eye. And I don't think that they're necessarily like having psychosis. I think it's like their protective part is so keyed up that it's like looking for like any possible sign of attack. And it's just like really on one. And so their brain's making connections, like their senses are making connections that aren't necessarily there.
They're brushing their crime of killing somebody under the rug. I think it's over as soon as Gary shows up. They're not thinking about, oh my God, like we have killed somebody. They're thinking like, I don't want to go to jail. We got to get this guy out of here. And I don't even think they don't talk about, hey, we committed this crime. Even when the broom falls, they're like, we had a problem, we handled it. They don't want to discuss any of it. And that I guess comes back to the whole secret keeping thing, right?
They keep sweeping it right under the rug.
Franny and Jet had secrets, and now they have secrets.
Right. Yeah, and Franny and Jet are kind of like mad at Julie and Sally for having the secrets. They're mad at them for not sharing the secrets, but they won't share their stuff with them either. So it's like, okay, well, you can't have your cake and eat too. I don't know.
You think the aunts ever killed anybody? I mean, I know
probably.
like the kid, like accidentally with the lightning and everything like that, but I'm wondering if they were ever in the same boat. Like, whoops, Ethan was an accident.
It was poor Ethan.
Maybe that's why they don't want to talk about it.
Maybe Jet killed him. That's why she was like, it was an accident.
Oh my God.
Well, and also,
could you imagine?
Also, I think it makes me curious just from like a family belief system perspective, like how seriously they take men, you know, like that sounds bad, but you know, because of their origin story is like men will hurt you and women who center men will hurt you. And they have made a life, like at least with their aunts that they're like actively decentering men. And like men are not a part of the equation. And so, which is why it's so interesting that they have a brother, you find out when you read the books. But...
Right. And then also in the books, none of the men take the Owens last name, or they don't take the men's last name. It's always the men taking the Owens last name. So the Owens name is the one that carries on.
So honestly, killing a man who sucks ass and is violent might not be a big deal. Like that sounds crazy to say, but I think that also says so much about cultural norms that you have to always be asking about that with clients, because something that you and I would view as like wild criminal behavior might be very, very normalized in their family system or in their culture. And so in this, I think because Jimmy is such, not just a man, but such a evil presence. I mean, that's also part of the belief system, right? I assume is like getting rid of like evil energy, evil vibes, and Jimmy is that incarnate. And you kind of see the belief system when Sally says, what, you're like a piece of shit like Jimmy, like why do you give a shit, like what, you're going to come in at us because we got rid of that asshole? But honestly, she is kind of making a point though, which is that's also your job is to like serve and protect, supposedly, and I did that. So
why am I doing your job?
So like we have a similar value system, babe, like why is this a problem?
She's basically saying to Gary, why can you do it if it's the title under the law over it, but I can't do it? It's ethically the same thing, right?
And then he says, well, he has to be judged. And she goes, well, he has been punished. So like they just skip the middleman.
Mhm. And also they're so in like active crisis over the movie that I don't know, maybe they have different feelings about it like months later. Like maybe there's regret down the road, but also I don't know, Jimmy's so intensely bad. Like he is like one-dimensionally bad that I could see where like if I killed a serial killer, I don't know if I would feel that tore up about it, especially in the way they do it where it's sort of like passive. And I think if I like it's gonna sound so graphic. I think if I like stabbed a serial killer in the heart and watched them die in front of me like that might have a different vibe to me than if I like poisoned them unknowingly and then they like died like 3 hours later. Like, so also I think like the nature of the death, I would say probably, and also the fact that like they bring him back and they kill him again, like it's so chaotic and it's so weird, like abnormal that I don't know. I think it would probably fit into their meaning making. Like we got rid of like an evil entity and that's to protect women and that's morally good.
Yeah.
From what we know about Jillian, when she's like, yes, I want to bring him back, do you think, is that coming from a place of like, I want this man in my life? Or is that like, we got to bring him back because we're going to go to jail and I need to like make sure we don't have this hanging over us. I'm going to leave him anyway.
I just don't think they understand the spell that they're doing.
No.
Which is the problem with secret keeping.
Yeah.
They're panicking. I think this is a panic response. This is like, oh, fuck, we killed him. What are we going to do? Oh, there's a spell that can fix it.
They're band-aiding.
Let's do the spell. No matter. Yeah, absolutely. Like no matter I don't think they have a moment to really consider what they're actually doing.
Yeah,
I think
because
they killed
it's so
him
bad.
because he was trying to kill Jilly. Like
well, also,
he was strangling her. Like
yeah. And this is the consequences of also letting children know parts of something, but not all of it. You know, as much as like the ants, I would be like, you guys can't be mad at them because you introduced them to magic, but you also kept a lot of secrets from them or didn't tell them the whole stories about a lot of things. And so, of course, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. And then I hate when they're like, well, you gotta clean up your own mess, which I get in some ways, but also like you're as much of the problem, if not more, than they are. Like you gave them this huge power, like this, you opened up the door of this like huge amount of gifts, and then you didn't like keep up with that with them. And so then if they use it in a moment of panic, it's like giving a kid a gun kind of.
They never got training. They never got witch training. Basically,
right?
They got the spark notes.
Yeah,
but they got like fun things to do, like I'm just gonna say turn on a candle.
That's
how that works. but like they, you know, they learned how to do fun things. They learned how to use different things from the garden. They learned what different herbs were, but they didn't necessarily learn how, when we put this all together, what is the outcome.
Mm-hmm. The only other time that spell, that resurrection spell, came up was in Sally's deep grief where she was grasping at straws for something, anything. And all they had to say was like, we don't do that. Like it'll be dark and unnatural. They didn't explain, has somebody tried this before? What was the outcome? Why is the page even still in there? Why is this an option? Before the girls to then come back and try it again when they've obviously not practiced.
Technically, there's a third time because in that second time, when she goes after Michaels dies, she references when she found it in there when mommy and daddy died. So there was another time that she saw that spell that the aunts had an opportunity when she was a child to explain, no, we don't do that spell. They had another opportunity to explain that and they didn't. That book should have been locked away behind a glass case.
But I do also wonder if that's like a consequence of Franny and Jet, like according to the prequel book, like they weren't raised to be witches. Like they were raised very, I guess, secularly, and they didn't come into this stuff until they were teenagers. And then they did a lot of self-taught stuff, you know, as they got older to like provide for themselves. And so I also wonder if this is like just a consequence of you have like two older women who didn't have proper guidance when they were learning it. And so they're kind of winging it. And now they're teaching two young people and they're probably definitely winging that. And also they have their own trauma shit. And so I wonder if they couldn't tolerate or they felt intimidated by trying to have like the more like serious conversations you have to have about something this powerful, that there's like ethics to it and not just know, but like why. Like kids really need to know why, especially with something like this, which would feel like such a gift of the power that you have. Like, why wouldn't I bring a loved one back? And so that's stuff that needs to be debriefed. Like that's something where if the aunts were knew how to do their due diligence, they should go find Sally and Jilly when we're all chill and talk through like, hey, this is why we don't do that.
They didn't have that Hogwarts money. They They couldn't have the training that they probably should have had at that age.
Because really that's what it is like, it doesn't seem like maybe they did that thing a lot of parents do where they just say, just don't do that, but they don't really explain like the ethics around behind it and the morality behind it and like why we do things like this and not like that, that's the skills part. That's the social emotional intelligence part where you help kids understand like the full idea of why you don't do something or you do something. And that's really what's missing. They're just doing that like the no, we don't do that thing because of this, like the kind of because I said so energy. And then people fill in the gaps because they don't know any better. Because what Sally believed was that the only reason why you don't do it is because the person doesn't come back correctly. Like, I mean, with Jimmy is a moot point. Like Jilly says, she's like, who gives a shit? He's a piece of shit anyway. Like, we just need him to have a pulse. Instead of maybe having a full understanding of like what would actually happen, like what are the potential risks if you bring someone back, if you fuck with that stuff. And that's where I assume the aunts really like let them down.
And I feel like a lot of times when people experience childhood trauma and nobody explains what happened or what was going on, a lot of times what happens because children are developmentally more egocentric, right? We know that. That's a part of development. That's a part of how little kids literally develop. And so a lot of times what ends up happening is when something is happening to you that doesn't make any sense, kids try to make sense of it to the best that they can. And because they're so egocentric, it comes back to them. It must be me. The only conclusion, no one is talking about it. Nobody is discussing this with me. It must be my fault. I must have done something wrong. There must be something here because nothing else makes sense. It must be my fault. And so a lot of times those core negative beliefs, that's where they get started. And you see the belief system in Inside Out 2, where they show how beliefs get made. That's really cool and very accurate. And that's also something that they both could have experienced as kids. So the other part of this too is like, even when we see Jilly and Sally, if I remember correctly, Sally does say to Jilly, he will come back as something unnatural. He will come back as something unnatural. I remember, I read the spell. It will be something but at that point, they're so panicked about what are we going to do, that they have to do something that they maybe would have never considered had they actually known the outcome, which is very similar to Dumbledore withholding information from Harry Potter.
We are Dumbledore
time.
Haters. After listening, this is something
anyway.
Yeah, this is something that does happen with our podcast because we do
off on another.
I guess at the beginning we didn't explain what our podcast really was, which is what we talk about movies through a psychoanalytical frame as licensed therapists. But yeah, when you watch those movies, you will sometimes be like, because I don't really watch movies through that lens. I like to play. I don't like to work, and so when I'm watching a movie, I'm really not thinking of it like a therapist. So when we watch things through the therapist lens, I'm like, oh no. And yeah, Dumbledore. Like, it's hard to like him after we did them for the podcast.
Yeah, I could see that. We kind of went down that a little bit with the morally gray aunts, like kind of what we're talking about now. Like we can't put it all on them. It's the generations of women that came before and what they're, choosing to pass on to the girls. But it's like the choices they're making, I don't know. I don't know about these girls anymore,
That's actually a really good segue into our next segment, Kristina.
Thanks,
man. Do that. Yeah, so this says, the aunts, while eccentric, play a huge role in shaping the sisters. How do you see attachment styles and intergenerational trauma play out in this family? And I guess, what do they pass on consciously or not?
Well, like we were saying earlier, I think they pass on an isolationist viewpoint that you really can only like talk to each other. Like when they do have friends, they have to go away to like find their like groups of other women. And so I don't think they consciously do that. I think they just are continuing, like I said, the way that they live with kids involved and not trying to shake any of those ideas. And maybe they even think like that's better off for the kids. Like that's a lot of times where adults will project their experience onto kids, be like, I'm saving them heartbreak by ripping this Band-Aid off now, even though that's not about them, that's about you. And so I could also see them maybe unconsciously not motivated to push the girls more socially because they want to spare them the heartbreak of like trying to fit in, trying to be normal, and then being like getting your heart broken by that.
I had a question about when we see Jillian being auntie mode doing spells with Kylie. How is her, I guess, reaction to Kylie saying exactly the same thing she did? You know, I can't wait to fall in love. Was that an appropriate way to handle that conversation, do you think? How do you think that went down, that scene?
No, not appropriate.
Well, yeah, because I think that's a perfect example of like Jilly sees herself in Kylie and it freaks her out instead of letting Kylie be her own person.
Yeah, I think she very much, again, and maybe as a person who, you know, hasn't been around kids very much, I would imagine, in her experience, and knows the girls, but hasn't been around enough to like really be in their lives. So I feel like it's exactly what Brittany said. She sees herself in Kylie and thinks that she's doing something helpful, but really is giving too much information to a little human.
She's doing what the aunts did to them.
Yeah, well, and also Kylie looks like her, so I'm sure Kylie probably freaks her out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally.
And then we see in the book a whole kind of that scene elevated, I think, with Jillian taking it upon herself to give, it's also Kylie, but she's the younger one, like a full makeover without asking permission, without running it by mom. Whatever Jillian wants, Jillian gets. She asks forgiveness, not permission. And we were talking about, are Jillian and or Jimmy energy vampires? Because they're draining.
Well, I think they both might have personality disorders, which I think can feel like energy vampires. They're trying to satisfy their internal self with external things, including people. And so they are trying to take something of outside of themselves into themselves in a way that you don't do if you're more well and more centered within yourself. And so that's kind of like my short answer to that. I think also with the ants, subconscious, I don't know, they do that weird thing with the kids too, where they've been in the same town for bajillion years. They're not really going anywhere. They're very rooted, but yet at the same time, they're like, this town isn't for us. And so they really only logically provide the girls with two answers, which is either you have to try to like aggressively fit in if we're going to stay here, or you got to get the fuck out of here and make your own life, which is what Jilly does. Like, because they do send that message of you can't be a different person here, which is why Jilly was like, I want to go somewhere where no one fucking knows our names, where I can be my own person. And that does make sense. And I think that's something that the aunts did teach them, I don't think they did anything consciously. I think it was all just they're walking around with all their stuff.
They're walking around with all their shit.
Speaking to the aunts and I guess how they're shaping Jillian and Sally's outlook on life, how can early caregiver relationships, how much does that actually impact who we are later on in life?
In our love
everything.
In general.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so early caregivers is how we learn how to be close. And if we really think about, not for everyone, but for most people, they're in their families or they're with their primary caregivers until they're 18 years old in some capacity, right? So it's 18 years of your life where you have been a part of a system that works in a very specific way. It's hard to do something a lot different than what you were shown for the first 18 years of your life. It's not impossible, but sometimes we need an intervention. Sometimes we need to go to therapy to learn how to do some of those things in a way that feels more comfortable and feels more connected to who we are authentically. And so early caregivers have a huge impact on how we feel close to each other, on how we respond to each other, the communication. You know, do you have a family who fights in front of you? Do you have a family where the parents only fight in the bedroom and so you never get to see any kind of real argument? And again, one that's appropriate for kids to see, like arguing maybe about the eggs and not about what you did 20 years ago, right? But it has a big impact. I mean, that's why I know it's like the old like shrink saying thing or whatever, which is like it's your family. Well, to be fucking honest, we learn a lot of shit from that. And a lot of it is unconscious things. Like when I have somebody who sits in front of me and I point out that, doesn't this seem similar to how you saw your parents respond to each other? Are you able? And they'll be like, oh my God, no, I didn't even think of that. And even I had my own experience when I was in grad school. You have to do a genogram, which is like a map of your family. And it's like a map with the emotional, relational experiences mapped. And I had my professor and my advisor at the time said, "Hey, did you notice that your mom was only married for 4 years, and all the times that she's been married in her life?" And that is another story that we are not going to talk about today.
Okay. That's after show.
And my
Patreon
first
content.
marriage, I was only married for 4 years.
Oh wow.
Oh my goodness.
That
I
is
made-
crazy.
And I remember having the feeling of like, oh, it's been a certain amount of time. I have, I have to get out.
Yeah. What were you gonna
That's
say, Kristina?
I made a slideshow for my therapist because I was like, this is too much to like tell you. So
Honestly,
I
I would
remember
love that.
PowerPoint.
I would love
Virgo
that.
brain was like, here's, and when you tell your parents like, hey, you're going to therapy, of course they're going to be like, oh, well, you're talking about me. Well, yeah, duh. I wanted to say something.
They always find out a way to make it about them, right? It's like
Exactly. I don't know what further I had to go off of that.
your PowerPoint presentation.
The caregivers, how they argue, but also how they resolve things. I don't think a lot of kids see their parents resolving the problem or being spoken to about like, here's how we're communicating now about what happened. I don't think that's at least not my experience.
That's a good point. I don't think I've ever seen that
Yeah.
in my family anyway.
Yeah.
Like you always
I
see the
certainly
start
never
of the
did.
argument, but never the resolve.
So the fact
Never that it can be resolved, never that you can say you're sorry, never that you can be flexible and compromise certain things. There's so many, like it is good for kids to see certain arguments that come to a resolution so they can learn that skill. So many people would just fight. Well, I've never saw my parents fight. My parents have never fought and they always act like they love each other. And it's like, oh, so what happened? They got divorced after 20 years of marriage.
I'm thinking of when
Well-
the littles, Kylie and Antonia, see their aunt. I don't know if we talked about this. I don't think they're brought into the room. They're like at the end with the exorcism, they help get rid of the frogs and they kind of get Jillian into position. But actually they might. I think Stalker Channing's like holding Kylie and when all the women are crying. So they see the fight happening, but I don't know if they're actually in the room when everything's quote unquote resolved.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully they have a debrief where they're like, hey, like, how are you still feeling? Because also we want to be careful that we don't lead the witness, if you will, like, because I work a lot with kids, like my background's child therapy. And so we want to be careful also as adults, like with them, if I had debrief with them, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, that was so crazy or that was so scary. Like I wouldn't assume that they're like traumatized by it. Like I would be like, whoa, like, I just wanted to make sure like you guys are feeling okay after what happened. Like, do you have any questions or things you want to talk about? And because they might have, I mean, they're kids. They might have just thought it as like this crazy, exciting thing. They've never seen their mom do magic. You know what I mean? And they know there's magic in the family. So Kylie might be like, that was fucking rad as hell. Like that was fucking dope. And Antonio might just be echoing whatever Kylie's saying. And so we want to be careful that we're not assuming that kids are like fucked up by something because they might be taking something totally different from it. Like they might be fine. They might be reacting to something totally different. Like, they might be more worried about
She might be more upset about the conversation she had with her aunt about falling in love. She might be more upset about that.
Or like, is
than
that
about
what it looks
seeing
like when you
this-
fall in love? Like,
Yeah.
or like, what's like, they might have more questions about like Jimmy in general. Like, you never know where kids' brains are, what they're latching onto. And you want to be careful that you're not giving
Putting
them
things in
things
their
to
head.
worry about.
Yeah.
Which
What
we're
we
very
know
good at doing as adults.
Which is very similar to being culturally competent, right? We can't assume that this experience that these girls had was automatically traumatic. As adults watching it, seeing little girls there, yeah, that feels scary. That feels like I wonder what's going through their mind. But that's just like when you have a client who doesn't call something trauma. Like, oh, well, that's just what happens. It's like, okay. And sometimes we just have to leave it like that for a little while because they're not ready to talk about it.
But also,
And so
they went to that full moon thing. So they'd have some context for like a bunch of women in a circle acting
Right.
And that's also true.
a little wild.
Totally.
It's not their first rodeo, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And then there is that one scene where the girls get yelled at for doing the whole chicken pox thing by Sally, and then they walk away and they're like, she's got all this power and she doesn't even use it. So speaking to what you were saying, Brittany, before, how that might have been exhilarating for them to see mom finally using her powers.
I mean, think when they see her light that candle, they're like, ah. Like, I could see me at that age being so geeked.
oh my God.
And
For
that's
real.
what I
I'm
took
so
from it was
excited.
just being totally geeked out. Like And also because like they're surrounded by a lot of competent women. And so we also don't know how unsafe they really felt. Like they might have been like, this is wild, but I don't know if they ever felt unsafe because they were surrounded by adults that were handling it, which is different than if it was just like full chaos.
Right.
And
Or
they
if
were
it
a
was
part
like
of
all
it.
kids their age trying to handle
Yeah.
it.
Because like you're right, like one of them's being held by one of the aunts, like they are being like taken care of in that moment. And it's very structured. Like the aunts come in and they mean business. Like they're like, take down these things, put these things up. So like they might have felt like, ooh, like it might have been scary at times, but I wonder how scared they really felt, because that's really going back to the question about early caregivers. Like that's what really early caregivers give you, is they give you security. And so if you feel secure, which I do think these girls are, because they had two very secure parents until they were decently developed, you know, like they probably will, like Kylie at least will remember their dad, and like that'll be very meaningful. So these are kids that are used to being taken care of by consistent, settled, grounded adults. And so when you trust adults and adults are there to manage things, like sometimes things aren't as scary. Whereas if it was like maybe Jilly and Sally at that age with that going on, they might be more traumatized by it, because not only did their, like when they say, did you forgive our mother? Like they have the experience of like adults will sometimes make choices that fuck you over.
Like subconsciously, you mean?
Like, no, I mean, like they know that their mom left them because she couldn't handle their dad dying. And so, and that's how kids would interpret suicide. They'd be like, mom left us. And so they have a more insecure attachment to a period. And so they don't have as much trust that adults will look out for them, will look out for their best interest, will take care of them. I think we see a little of that with Sally because she goes through that depression. But even in that moment, it seems like the kids can recognize like something, like mom is just having a hard time, not necessarily like that she's going to leave us. Like she's still in the house. She's just sleeping a lot. She just seems sick, which is different than our mom is gone and now we have to go live with these people that we've maybe never met before. Like that's a very different. So I think with Kylie and Antonio, they might have that what we would call protective factor of like having a very secure attachment to adults and trusting that adults will take care of you. And so they're surrounded by adults. So they might have felt like scared, like in the, like, oh, this is scary that's happening, like seeing a horror movie or something, but like we're not in danger.
Do you think with what we know about Sally and the secrets of all the Owens, would she be somebody to go to her girls after and be open about like, hey, this is what you saw?
I think I want to say Sally would.
Yeah.
Because I do think she seems like someone who probably read parenting books. I mean, she's trying to be part of the PTA, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think she's trying to do things right, whatever that means, like being a good parent, being a good citizen. So I could see her maybe even taking it too far, maybe like being a little helicoptery afterwards, being like really worried that she fucked her kids up. I could see her like taking it maybe a little too far. But I feel like she would want to do the right, quote unquote, the right thing by her kids by like not ignoring it or like acting like it wasn't a big deal. I could even see her maybe feeling guilty about how involved they were. Like they were like pushing Jilly around when she was in that crazy with all the frogs coming out and like all that stuff. Like I could see her feeling maybe guilty afterwards. Like I really tried to keep this life from them and then I like threw them into the deep end.
Yeah. Snowballing off of that whole exorcism scene. It is one of the most I think it's one of the most powerful scenes in the film, because that's when the town women finally come together in support of Sally when she finally declares, I'm a witch. She's not hiding who she is anymore. What does that moment tell us about community support and collective healing?
I think it's really important that we all have a support system. We need each other. We just do. I feel like that moment really tells us that we can do this, that you can do something that feels hard and scary and impossible if you have people around you who understand you and who want to help and who can be helpful. And that's true. That's true now. That's true always. We need to have a support system. It's something that I talk about with clients a lot. Like, I'm so glad that you're sharing with me and telling me all these things. Who else? Is there someone else in your life that you can share these things with? We need to create a support system for you so that you have 4 4 people you can call if you need to, or even 2 people. Like it doesn't have to be a numbers thing, but it's so much more about we all need each other. And that's just the truth.
And I think it's a good example of, in my opinion, like vulnerability begets vulnerability. So like when they're finally in the house and they're telling the stories of like the times that they felt like they were a little witchy, like that to me says a lot about how if we are more open with each other, people usually like take us up on it. It's very like I try to practice vulnerability as much as I can, like in my personal life. And I think more often than not, like people respond well to that and they are vulnerable with me in turn. And it helps people feel good and connected to other people. That's why group therapy can be really powerful, is like feeling like I'm not alone and that we can rely on a lot of people. It's very important to have, like you were saying, Hannah, a support system, but like a varied support system, that it's not enough to just have your family. It's not enough to just have your romantic partner. You need several people in your life in case you need the numbers, one. And also like, because not everybody can talk about everything either or be everything for you. And so I think that was just a good example of the power of vulnerability. And because it's very vulnerable, like Jilly, like it's their dirty laundry, like their family, if you want to think about it like that, is like airing their dirty laundry to people in their town that historically have not been kind. So it's a very vulnerable thing. And I think honestly, and this is the optimist in me, in that moment, even with like the fact that those people could have really like been shitty about how messy and chaotic was, that they weren't. Like they were, I think when people see someone in distress like that and they feel called to help them, I think people will help, you know, when it's like personal like that. Like these are girls that they all grew up together. Like you might have, like I have people from like back in the day, like my hometown, that I might have had like beef with when I was 15. But if they were like on the road, like dying or like in distress, like I would be like, oh shit, like I would go help them. And maybe even the fact that I know them from the past would maybe even like motivate me more to get involved. And so I think that speaks a lot to how much we do want to be with each other, and we do want to be vulnerable and seen by each other. There's all this other muck that gets in the way, unfortunately.
I'm thinking that I'm trying to give the townswomen the benefit of the doubt that maybe they also felt closed off. Like these Owens women, you know, maybe think they're better than everyone else. They don't need us. They don't want to be a part of our community in some way. Most of us, all of us, have been hurt by someone, whether it's a significant other, a man, or whatever. But when a woman is like, "Oh, you've been hurt by a man? I'll be right there. What do you need?" Because they've all been there. And I think that circle of women seeing her there probably did a lot of healing for their own personal, traumas. Yeah.
Well, and also where I can throw I mean, it's harder with the women because you're grown-ups. Why are you still holding on to these like old ass ideas and grown-upness? Like if I saw a girl right now that I had beef with when I was 14, but I haven't seen them in like 20 years, I'm not going to be like, look at that bitch over there. Like I'd be like, oh, I wonder what she's
I wouldn't
up to.
recognize them.
Like
I'm
I'd have like a
different
well, and also I'd have a different perspective. Like I'd be like, well, she probably was also feeling hurt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And something else was going on. And so I think where I can put like a social understanding of it is like Franny and Jetty were like probably the old witches in the town. You know what I mean? Like there wasn't any kids that lived in the house. There hasn't been kids in that house since the 60s, maybe even earlier. Like there's been multiple generations where like, no, there are just these 2 old women in that house. Or like there is an old woman in that house. Like that's the witch house. Everyone has a witch house like in their neighborhood. And then these 2 girls show up and there's like no context to it. That would be like mysterious. And then who knows what their parents are fucking saying. I think with like kids like that too, like when they have that fucking, like they say it's the same chant they've been saying for generations, kids learn that somewhere obviously. And so it's all this like passed down stuff. And it's like that stuff where like once you get down to it with someone like in the town, they probably couldn't tell you why they don't like them. You just don't like them. Like you just don't like, it's like any kind of bigotry. Like when you really get down to the brass studs, there's nothing real there. It's just like passed down ideas.
Yeah. And didn't we have a conversation, Kristina, where we were like, so the town is called Maria's Island, named after the ancestor of them, but the town hates who
Hater
the island is
behavior.
named
Never
after?
changed the name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, hater behavior.
I mean, you have to have somebody so it wasn't them.
You're right.
Well, and also there probably is also just old school misogyny. Like we can have an island named after the woman who quote unquote founded it, but like that doesn't make it the same as like when a guy founds a town and then his family is like the princes of the town for, it's not like Fear Street with the goods. And so I probably use misogyny too, where it's like we can recognize that she founded the town, and that way the town's named after her is like the little treat we give her. But we're not gonna like recognize a matriarchal line, which might be part of the ostracizing. Like maybe men in the town felt a type of way about the town being founded by women, and so they called them witches and ostracized them and othered them so that they could hold the power. Because like I said, if they were a man, if Maria had been a guy, they probably would run that town. Like that would they'd probably be like the fucking mayors of that town, you know what I mean, and call all the shots. But they don't, and I assume that's because it's a woman who founded it, not a man.
They do have their hand a little bit in like controlling the fate of the town, because they're ostracized, but all the women at night are coming to them for help for whatever reason, for fertility or another woman's man. They have power, but it's so secreted.
Well, it's the power that like when it's more like a matriarchal thing where it's like it's all like secret backdoor, like sewing circle shit. It's not like if this was a guy, it'd be like they probably have an office downtown. People would go to
the
them
statue
to get their like spells did or whatever, and they'd be part of like the town council. Like it would be much more legitimized,
so different.
But because they're women, and especially, God forbid, if they were like a woman of color, like it becomes this like backdoor, the way that like a lot of more feminine professions were like backdoor stuff.
Hush hush.
Yeah, like hush hush, or like I can't own a restaurant, but I can like make pies out of my kitchen and people buy them. You know what I mean? Like it's this very more informal way that women have been allowed to like have businesses, quote unquote, that if they were a man, it would be more legitimate.
Right.
Aunts are not paying taxes on that dove money coming in.
On the dove money?
They are probably they probably don't even have social. They do have social security numbers because they were raised secularly.
They
But
probably do a spell, so they can't change the name of the town.
They probably do something with the IRS. They probably don't exist to the government. They probably have like a
like religious protections or something.
like not even that. I feel like they probably did like a spell like notice me not. Like they're like, you can't, like they are invisible
glamour
to the government.
Government glamour. I like that.
They're not registered as a business.
Yeah. Yeah.
So funny.
And they probably do the whole like I'm old kind of thing. If like God forbid a G-man would come around, they'd probably be like, me, a little old lady.
I misplaced the W2.
I mean, sometimes I make lotions for people, but is that a crime? Like they probably just act stupid. Yeah.
Bought a method, anyone?
Yeah.
So I'm really fascinated by the tarot, which is rich in archetypal imagery and themes, and I know that Carl Jung, whose work greatly influenced modern psychology and explored archetypes, personality types, and even dabbled in the more esoteric realms. I'm curious, do you guys ever incorporate Jungian ideas or archetypal frameworks into your clinical work? And do you see any value in blending traditional psychology with more symbolic or intuitive tools like the tarot, even if it's just through like a metaphorical lens?
Well, unfortunately for you guys, Ben isn't here. Ben
is that his realm?
He is the Jungian archetypal. Awesome. Like, to be real, as soon as the word archetype shows up, I can feel my eyes, like my brain, like
blacked out.
Like I'm like, I think I know what they are. Like it's like there are certain things my brain won't take in.
Yeah.
But I think that's because kind of like a second part of your question, I think because I am more of like an intuitive, I guess, therapist. Like in that and sometimes I will talk about tarot actually with clients, like more than I'll talk about like Jungian stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like what's your thoughts, Hannah?
Well, like she said, Ben knows all that stuff, and I'm, when you get out of school,
he's got
talks about the heroes. Ben will talk about the hero's journey and like all that kind of stuff.
We're gonna have to get him back on the next time we talk.
But I feel like, a big part of meeting people where they are in therapy is being able to figure out what are the things that are important to them and what are the things that they're connected to. And as tarot continues to get more, I mean, it's pretty fucking popular in lots of different ways. I think, using that, like, or using astrology, like sometimes we'll talk about astrology with clients. Sometimes I'll have a client who I know does tarot and knows how to read it. And I'll say, well, did you pull a card for today? Like, what did the card say? And like, let's talk talk about that because I can have all the knowledge of a therapist in the whole world and still have a client that needs something different. That's being a therapist. Everybody needs something different. Everybody, and yeah, sure, sometimes do they fall in similar categories? Sure. But most of the time, it's a pretty individual experience to have a therapist. And so if they really, again, this is like that, even if we want to call it that cultural context, if that is meaningful to them, if something is meaningful to them, that is a way that we can connect to different things in their life. That is a way that feels that they understand it, right? So now they're looking through a lens with something that they can reference and understand. And so I think Brittany uses it a little bit more than I do, but also because she is truly gifted in reading tarot. And I'm never going to not say that. It's incredible.
Awesome.
She has stuff.
Okay.
She has stuff. She's
All right.
magical.
Thank you.
She's a magical being.
Thank you. But I would say like, yeah, I think Jungian people do find comfort in like, because there's so much terminology with Jungian therapy. Like when people say shadow work and stuff, like it's a very like a glossary, you know? So I can from an academic point of view, I can see why people like it because it gives a lot of frameworks and like words to things that I think help people understand ideas and stories and stuff like that. Like the, you know, like you're saying, like the tarot and like how that's its own, like the fool's journey, you know? And I feel like it's hard though, because I feel like how much do I weave traditional things into? It really depends. I feel like when you get to like the old school, like Freud and stuff, you really need to pick and choose what you're going to take seriously because a lot of their shit is so gross, in my opinion. And they did a lot of gross stuff, like a lot of early pioneers of anything. They did a lot of gross stuff to like get that information. And also they projected, I think, a lot of their bullshit. It's very male centric. I mean, like the idea that like penis envy and stuff like that. It's like, can you take that a step further, bro? And just be like, women don't want to have a penis or like whatever you think comes from the energy of having a dick. They are living in a patriarchal society, so they want access to the same power that men have. That doesn't mean they want to be a man. They just want to be able to have equal rights, bro. And so it's like you can get right up there and then you still run into your own misogyny bullshit. So I would say like I would weave Jungian stuff more than I would weave Freudian stuff into
Freud
current
stuff
therapy.
I don't ever use or even think about. I don't even think about it.
I think the only thing I think about with Freud
me
is
and
like
Brittany,
ego.
One of the things that I think me and Brittany are maybe more connected to is Carl Rogers. Carl Rogers is somebody who really focuses on unconditional positive regard. And that speaks more to me than Jungian or any of the other stuff. Like you have to having unconditional, what is that? I keep forgetting.
Unconditional positive regard. I just think Carl Rogers and Fred Rogers are very similar. And so think of it like more of like the Mr. Rogers approach, which is like very open. You don't talk a lot. Like it's the stereotypical therapist. It's like, like a lot of nodding, a lot of encouraging. It's the idea that you have to hold positive feelings, like loving, positive, compassionate feelings towards your client, no matter what they bring to session. And which is different than like giving them a pass. It's less analytical because that's really what Jungian and Freud is, like analytical, like analyzing the shit out of yourself, analyzing the shit out of every thought and dream and feeling you have. Whereas I guess, and I'm very cautious actually about over pathologizing ourselves. And I think also with how like all these buzzwords in therapy are becoming mainstream, I think we have to be very careful about over intellectualizing our mental health, which I think Jung can do. And in my opinion, when I work with people who want to talk about stuff like that, they're usually over intellectualizing. And more of what we're getting into nowadays, more where I lean is like Carl Rogers, sort of like sitting with yourself, like feeling your feelings, more like grounding, paying attention to your physical self and your emotional self, and not so much like, I don't know, it feels very masculine to be like, I'm thinking all this because it's like, shut up. It's like, but do you know how you feel though, bro? Like, do you know how you feel and what to do about it? Like, I don't care if it's because your mom like that's part of it, but then the next part is the important part, which is what are you going to do about that?
Yeah.
You know, and are you going to use that as an excuse for the rest of your life?
Yeah.
Such a rich story filled with symbolism, inherited patterns, and emotional shadow work. Do you think stories like this, which tap into archetypes and magical realism, can serve a therapeutic purpose, almost like modern myths or fairy tales that help people process complex emotions?
Sure. I mean, that's kind of the point of our podcast, is the idea that you can learn about yourself through stories
Absolutely.
and recognize yourself in stories.
Yeah, I mean, a part of my regular work with clients is talking about shows and movies that they've watched and what did you, who was your favorite character? What did you like about what they did or what did you not like about what they did? How do you see yourself in that? And also, it's so much more accessible to talk about someone else who's experiencing something similar than talking about yourself. So in some ways, it also lends to allowing someone to get used to the space of talking about your feelings and expressing your feelings with someone that you have only met over a screen. It's so different.
Yeah, and there's a term called bibliotherapy, which I wonder if there's a newer term for that. Because bibliotherapy is basically like books, like stories, like written stories, and like using those to process yourself. And I wonder now with like the advent of technology, if there's a newer word for that or if they're going to update that word because biblio doesn't really capture the whole. It's like cinetherapy now or something.
Okay. Do any of your clients know about your podcast?
Yeah, I don't really tell a lot of my clients about it, so it'll happen
naturally,
indirectly, or like, yeah, it has to really like hit a pocket.
Yeah.
But I'm also not someone who talks about that kind of stuff in general very much.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not a big self promoter.
Yeah, I definitely, if it feels relevant or if they brought up podcast first, I don't ever say, I also have a podcast. Like it's much more
you don't want to feel like
hey,
you're selling your client something.
Right.
And I always preface it with, you don't have to listen. You don't have to tell me if you listened. If you hate it, that's fine. There's no pressure here. But we talked about a lot about anxiety, and we just released an episode on Inside Out 2 that's almost exclusively about anxiety. I think it might be helpful for you to maybe listen and let's just see. And if you like it, cool. If you don't, that's fine. Like, it's just very much trying to, but I definitely have clients who listen.
Awesome.
I definitely have clients who listen, which is kind of
weird,
awesome and weird.
I don't like
it's
it.
Very weird.
I don't like it.
We're very like, we're just people, man. Like,
well, also Hannah and I are very different in terms of I don't self-disclose as much in therapy. Like I do, I'm a big compartmentalizer, like organically. So I like this to be over here and this to be over there. So like with my clients, I'm like, dude, don't. It's like it feels like they would like run up on me at a bar or something. Like I'm like, no. Like this is private, Brittany. Even though I'm doing professional stuff, like do not listen. I do because I do think I have one client who does, but I'm like, ugh, don't ever bring it up. Like don't ever bring it up. I don't want to hear about it. Like
working together between the three of you, I'm sure, and being kind of like in different niches of your profession, a big bubble of your profession, you learn from each other.
Oh, sure.
There ever been film you discussed that you've then taken in to a session, not specifically like, hey, this happened in the film, but learning from each other. Oh, Brittany just taught me that through this episode we did, and you pass
all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, I steal shit from Ben and Brittany on the regs.
Yeah, like
it's just because that's what's so fun. That's why we talked about movies and shit before we even did the podcast, because it's so fun to talk about. It's so interesting. A big part of what Ben brings to the podcast is he's a little bit more academic than me and Brittany, right? And it's really helpful when we need some of that groundwork, some of that psychoeducation. And Ben really brings that. He also sometimes brings, like sometimes me and Brittany will be like, oh man, I wonder what Ben is going to come up with for this episode. It'll be so interesting to see what his take on this. So it's just a really fun conversation and we really like talking about it. So it makes it really easy.
It shows in your episodes.
Oh, good.
You guys have like a good chemistry of bouncing ideas off of the three of you.
And you don't always agree, and that's,
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I love how in the Practical Magic episode, you guys, like the first 5 minutes of the episode, you couldn't get the names of the characters right, or like you kept forgetting the names of the characters, and I was like, that's like pretty much me and Kristina's vibe. Like we just like we're so unserious about everything. Right? Exactly.
Well, yeah, and there's so much to remember.
Yeah,
because we're recording tonight actually, and the movie we're doing, I was like writing down everybody's names. I'm like, oh god, like I've learned to like if there's a big cast, I'm like,
I have to go back through. I'm just gonna go through the cast list. I'm just gonna go through the cast list
because it's
and write down the names.
Because
I guess.
Yeah.
Well, just two things in the therapeutic lens to wrap it up. So we did kind of touch on the aunts. Is there any kind of therapy that would best suit them if they did seek out help? And then also for anybody watching Practical Magic this May, what do you hope they take away about mental health?
So the odds, if they came to therapy, I mean, I think they'd be very different because they have such different dispositions. I would be curious what brings them into therapy. Let's say if they both were finally like, something's got to give or whatever. I think with both of them, I would do more somatic therapy, like they need to feel their feelings. I think Jet probably hides behind a lot of fluffiness and niceties, and so I think with both of them it would just be a lot more like, tell me your actual story and let's sit in your story and really acknowledge like the parts of it that were difficult, because they do have a long trauma history. Like they have more what I would consider, I could see them having more like complex PTSD after reading like the prequel, because they have a lot of stuff happens to them, like boom, 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 and a lot of death. It would depend on how they open up. And I think that would take me in whatever direction I needed to go. But it might just be like old fashioned talk therapy and like, I guess narrative therapy is what we'd call it, which is like, can you tell me your story? And let's like just talk through that together, because they're so closed off. I think that alone could be really interesting, of like finally opening up about their identity and stuff. And then I would say what I hope people take away from it. I mean, I guess community, that like we have to rely on each other. That also, I think I want people to take away from it that like bereavement, I guess, that like bereavement is a real mental health condition that people can go through after someone dies. So like Sally sleeping a lot and having more of like that depressive presentation can be bereavement. And that's not something people really know a lot about. I think when people watch it, you just have to get help. Like you can't just like swallow stuff by yourself, and you can't just rely on your family. Like you have to allow other people to help you.
Love it.
And you can't just not think about it.
I don't know if it was your practical magic episode, but I remember Ben saying about it's like eating something bad and needing to throw it up, but you're just, the more you smash it down, the worse you feel, and I don't know if it was that episode or not, but I was like, Ben, and he talked about it being like not the stages of grief, it's the rainbow of grief. And I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly it.
Well, and also I think they, take from it like, you can't just keep rolling through horrible things. When horrible things happen, especially to kids, like they have to be able to talk about it and you have to acknowledge it. The thing where people are like, I just take care of their needs, like their basic needs, and then it'll all be fine. Like it's more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like in terms of therapy with the aunts, I think I agree with Brittany. I think traditional talk therapy to get them started. And then I think I'm in the process of getting trained to do internal family systems, which is it's like a paradigm shift. In terms of we all have parts and we all have all of these different parts, and how they work together internally is what we're experiencing. And so I have a part that's like an angry part. I have a part that's a sad part. And how did those parts work together to try to help to keep me protected or like regulated or whatever? And so I think in order to help them manage their trauma, it's a trauma therapy. Internal family systems is a trauma therapy, that I would want to do that with them, because I think that they have a lot of us we have our capital S self, but then we also have these big parts that eclipse us at times when we're feeling scared or anxious or whatever the case might be. When that firefighter comes in, is like, we're shutting this down. You don't need to think about that. You don't need to feel that right now. You're going to think about what you ate 2 weeks ago that you thought you did it weird and that somebody maybe saw you. It has to be something. So I think that's what I would want to do with the aunts, but also they also might be somebody who comes in and we just get to know each other for like a year and a half before we can do anything.
Okay. Is that something that you would do with the aunts in the room together, or they have their own separate sessions? How would that work?
Well, the family part of it means their internal selves, not like
it's all internal.
Family.
It's all internal.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. I know it's kind of a misleading
yeah.
name.
So do you do any type of like that group family therapy, like where people are in the sessions together?
Yeah. She's a family therapist, actually, Hannah.
Okay.
Like,
I'm a family therapist, so
And I've done family therapy too.
Yeah.
I would say I'd want to work with the aunts together when they first get the kids, get Jilly and Sally. I'd work with them without Jilly and Sally actually first. And I would do what I call like parent coaching, which is kind of just like, coaching people how to parent their kids in a healthy way. And I've worked with a decent amount, because I work with so many like foster kids and just really traumatic situations. I've worked with a lot of caregivers who weren't the bio parents, whether it's like an aunt, an uncle, or grandparents, or foster parents or adoptive parents. And it's a different skill set to parent a kid that's gone through a lot of shit than a kid that hasn't. And I think where a lot of people can not go wrong, but just kind of like where the situation can go left is parents or caregivers thinking that they can just like kind of what we see the ants do, like, oh, I'll just incorporate the kids into my established life. Whether it's like I'll parent them the same way that I parented my other children. And I've worked with a lot of parents where they try to parent these kids that they've taken over care for the same way they parented like maybe their now grown-up kids or their bio children. And then they're in my office like, why is this happening? Why is the kid doing this? Why is this so much different for her? Why can't I basically like apply the same parenting strategies? And so my job would be to like do a lot of trauma-informed psychoed with them of like, they're not the same kind of kids. Like kids are different and kids who've gone through shit need a different kind of parenting than kids who haven't. And so like if I worked with the ants, I would probably do more of the, if they're getting bullied, how are you managing that? How are you contributing or not? Because I feel like they're probably pretty neglectful actually about that stuff. I think they just go, this is how it is, and, you know, shrug their shoulders. And so I would probably encourage them, which they probably wouldn't like, and they probably say, I don't get it, encourage them to, you know, be mindful of how they are cultivating community for these kids and helping them feel less isolated because they're already going to feel isolated by the situation at hand. And I wouldn't want the kids in the room because this is where I'm trying to empower the parents. And so you don't want to do that in front of the kids because then it just disempowers them and then the kids can say things like, you're only doing that because you're a therapist. And I want the parents, the caregivers to be like the people in charge and not like me.
Yeah. And a lot of times when you have kid clients, you're working with the parents. Kids are kids. And kids who have experienced things, of course, like Brittany was talking about, but also parents really think that it's a singular thing, that if we can fix their kid, that then everything will be fine. And almost always it's a family system. It's the way that they treat each other. It's the way that they do all these different things. And so I think a lot of parents think that, oh, your kid is going to come in and I'm going to have some magical thing that I do, and they're going to be the perfect little angel all the time. And it's like having to really I give parents a whole speech when I work with a kid. I'm like, yes, I will be working with your kid, but I'm gonna tell you right now, some of the stuff that you're bringing up is stuff that has to do with you and not with them.
Awesome.
Amen. This was cool. This is awesome to talk to you guys.
Yeah. We really blew through 2.5 hours, no probs.
Oh, we could talk for like 8 hours straight. We've done it before, right, Kristina?
I was like 2.5 hours this morning, and then of course.
Yeah.
So easy.
We love that y'all love this movie, and we're willing to sit back down and talk about it. And now, oh my God, Practical Magic 2. How do you feel about that? There's so much more.
I'll believe it when I see it, and I will judge it when I see it.
Okay.
Okay.
I feel encouraged by the fact that like Nicole Kidman and Sandra Bullock are involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the production of it.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish they would
know.
just do the books. Like, I think it would be more interesting if they just like developed the whole family lore as its own book series, because I'm currently being traumatized by my favorite books. One of my favorite books is The Witching Hour by Anne Rice, which is currently being made into a show that sucks ass, and I will say that publicly. But as someone who's
it's an abomination.
Oh no.
So when I say that I hope for the best and I plan for the worst, I gotta protect my heart, you know.
Maria's origin.
Yeah, I would love to see Maria's origin.
Yeah.
Maria's origin. I would love to do the Franny, Jetty,
That would be
Vincent
such
stuff.
a fun era to
Like, I think
see.
it would be so easy to adapt these other parts of the story into like, I guess a Owens cinematic universe.
Yeah.
Like,
They could do flash forwards, flashbacks, like
yeah.
No
jump around and make it make sense. And they could like cover all the span of 4 books in one film if they wanted to.
Well, when you're done reading any and all the books, a single or all at once, we want to talk to you about it. If you need an outlet, come
We're
here.
here.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I would definitely love
Absolutely.
to come back and talk about the characters
Yeah.
once I've read all the books, because I think
Same.
I think there's more I understand about Franny and Jetty since like knowing more about the fact that they even have a brother, which was so wild when I read it first time, and like all that stuff, and it explains how Sally and Jilly came to be because they're not the Ants's kid. So like, who's their mom, you know? And so
Awesome. Well, thank you very much again.
yeah, thank you.
And we
It's fine.
appreciate you being
Thank you for
here.
having us.
Anything else? Where can our listeners find you on Instagram? And is there anything coming up that you want to promote or let the listeners know about?
You can find us at Popcorn Psychology kind of everywhere. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. You can email us at popcornpsychology@gmail.com if you have questions. We are always taking recommendations. Sometimes people will email those to us. You can become a Patreon patron. And you can find us at any like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, like anywhere you listen to podcasts, we're there, I assume. Even on like YouTube, but no visual, just listening to us on YouTube. We always take suggestions, and we've been doing this. This is our 8th season that's starting up. So we've already talked about a lot of movies, and so I'm sure there's something for everybody. We try really hard to have kids movies, like Matilda is a great episode, and we also try to have like big franchise movies, but also we did Portrait of a Lady on Fire last season, and that was really good. So like we try to hit most sectors of movies. I don't know, like upcoming, we have a Moonstruck episode coming up soon, and that'll be really good.
Is that the Cher movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that movie. It's so
We
cute.
need to do Witches of Eastwick.
Yes.
We do need to do
Wait,
Witches
have
of
you done the
Eastwick. Yeah, I'll
craft
put
yet?
it.
Have you done the
No, we haven't really done Practical Magic. I think is the only real witchy movie we've done.
Okay. All right.
Spooky season's around the
We have
corner.
to
We're halfway there.
We have to ease Ben in a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
To some of those films.
Yeah. He does the whole like, this movie's not for me, but I can appreciate, which I also do my own
That's
version
nice.
of it when we talk about Star Wars and stuff.
Sure.
Okay.
Mhm.
Cool. Thank you, Hannah and
Yeah,
Brittany.
thank you for having us.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome. Good luck at
Yes.
work.
Thank you so
Oh,
much.
thank you. Not a terribly
It's
busy
so nice
day.
to meet both of you.
Yeah,
It's
for real.
Awesome to meet you too.
It's to put faces to names, you know.
Yeah, same.
All right, y'all take
And
it
voices.
easy.
All
Yeah.
right.
Voices, yeah.
Have a good day, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks. See ya.
Bye. That was
You were
cool.
fantastic.
Yeah, no, they were so down to earth. Like, you know, when you think of like psychologists, you think you're going to be talking to like these intellectual people with all these like big words and like it's intimidating, but like they're so down to earth, they're so grounded, and they make psychology and therapy not such a scary thing.
It's
Or-
like palatable. It doesn't seem
Right.
like it's such a like crazy construct anymore. And they are very intellectual, but it's not like they're like
they're
no,
not,
you
like,
get it
arrogant
because
about
it's
it.
yeah.
right? Like they have to be intellectual, that's their profession, but like they're not like they don't have like a condescending arrogance about it. Like it's just comforting to talk to them, you know?
Oh, so easy. Yeah, that was so good. And there's so much more that like we could have asked, and I knew
Oh my
I didn't
God.
expect to talk to them for so long. I know we had a ton of questions,
Yeah.
but my mind I just kept writing things down because I wasn't sticking to script at all. And there was
Right.
so much I wanted to talk to them about, but they
Yeah.
did such a great job.
I was trying to just use the questions more as like a jumping off point. Like if there was like a
Oh,
awkward
sure.
silence or something, I would be like, all right, well, how about this one? If we didn't touch on it yet. But they kind of, it just flowed so easily, and they kind of pinpointed all the stuff that we had on there. So
When somebody loves practical magic, it's like
know.
they freaking love that thing, and it's so easy to talk about. So
it was very
thank
easy.
you again to the lovely ladies from Popcorn Psychology, and we hope to meet Ben real soon because I know we just had our tarot, which is kind of the hero's journey, but it would be very cool to get his take on that.
Yeah, for sure. If you guys do want to support the podcast on Patreon, you can support us for as little as $1 a month. That's our seedling tier, and that gets you access to our patron-only polls where you get to weigh in on what topics you would like us to talk about next. It also gets you our monthly calendar so you can see what topics we have coming up for the month, and it also gets you a welcome shout out on the show. Our $3 Lavender Bud tier gets you our show notes for each episode in an aesthetically pleasing PDF, our after hours posts, if there's any extra tidbits or behind the scenes info pertaining to any of our episodes, we'll post those along with a blog post or extra photos, and access to our specially curated Spotify playlists. We have created playlists for our WMSR episodes as well as Production Dream playlists for each song episode, and more. Our $5 Lilac tier gets you access to our private Facebook community where we host a monthly live stream. Plus, you'll get access to our Discord server where we host our monthly watch parties. And also on the Discord, you can join in on the discussion with other Magnolia Street neighbors via the various interesting channels and threads. And then here's the $8 Rose tier. This gets you access to extra audio visual content such as a once a month full-length video episode, unlimited bonus videos, uncut footage, cutting room floor footage, bloopers, outtakes, meditations, exclusive interviews, and old home videos from the vault, or spell or ritual videos and more. It also gets you bonus content to coincide with our song-a-sos, such as full-length demo streams of our original Practical Magic inspired music, plus lyric sheets, guitar chords, and original scratch demos, or bonus video performances of our songs and more. Lastly, we have our $15 Wisteria Vine tier. Just like a twisting Wisteria Vine, there's a way for you to stay connected with us, the Stinas. In this tier, we invite you to join our private Marco Polo video messaging app. The app is totally free for both Android and iOS. Sign up with your phone number or email, and we will help you do the rest. This is a great way to chat with each other in a more intimate group setting, face-to-face via video recording. We love to show each other our pets, our gardens, or anything else you'd like to share. And just a reminder that the higher the tier you sign up under, the more rewards you get, because you get all of the rewards of the tiers below it. You can upgrade or downgrade or even cancel at any time. So to support the podcast, head to patreon.com/Magnolia Street Podcast.
Yeah, and there are additional ways to support us and our podcast that don't cost you any money. If you do listen on Spotify, please give us a star rating. If you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, please give us a written review. We love sharing those on our Instagram. And if you're on Instagram, we would really appreciate any reposts or blurbs about our podcast. And make sure to tag us at Magnolia Street Podcast in your feed, posts, stories, and share us with your Practical Magic loving friends.
Come back next week. We're going to be either doing salt, maybe tequila, I don't know, something. Maybe the roast episode. Not sure yet. Well, I'll have to throw something together.
Right. Okay, cool.
Right? Yeah. All right. So with that said, I'm Justina.
I'm Kristina.
And we'll see you next time.
At the house on Magnolia Street, would you go?